Hi, and welcome back to Beers with Buds. I'm your host, Andrew Freedman, the cannabis sommelier. I'm joined here by Mackenzie Putici, the traveling som. Happy to have you here, Mackenzie.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Do you prefer Mac, Mackenzie? The som, the traveling som?
Mac or Mackenzie, whatever you like.
I'm going to go with Mac.
Okay.
I like that. I like nicknames for everybody.
Sounds good.
So thanks for being here. Why don't you just tell everybody about yourself? Just start talking about yourself because that's the best thing to do.
Yeah, sure. The traveling som's kind of my online handle because before getting into the som world and wine world, I was doing a lot of traveling. I taught English abroad and lived in Latin America, Europe, traveled in Asia, a bit of Africa. So that's always been a passion. But what was really cool is that as I traveled, I also got to taste a whole bunch of wine and spirits and different things locally. So I've been in like South Africa, Italy, France. I've been to Turkish wineries, Romanian wineries, went down to Latin America. So it was always more of a hobby. But then when I moved back to Canada, I got into kind of serving in fine dining and went down the rabbit hole of wine, did some courses, and then this past August I finally got my certified level Court of Master Som certification. So that was nice. And then for the past 3 years I've been based in Toronto doing a bunch of wine tours to the Canadian wine regions, Niagara and Prince Edward County, and doing some different like food, drink, and spirits tours and tastings in the city as well.
Awesome. Just for everybody, we're in central western interior Canada right now. Mac's from really cool Toronto, so
what can I say? It
gets rubbed in a little bit, but the Leafs aren't very good. Go Flames, go! Means absolutely nothing to everybody listening in America because the NHL is basically null and void there. But I'm sure that's the same in South Africa or Latin America when you're traveling. Tell me about like where you ended up. Why did you decide to go teach English? I assume, and where'd you end up first?
So my first like big contract job was actually in Moscow. I was there for a year.
Cool.
And really I kind of had the travel bug, and I'd done some big trips to like Southeast Asia and a few things, and I was like, oh, well, I'm saving up money for months, and then I go blow it on a 6-week trip or something like that. And so I said, well, what can I do where I can travel and make money at the same time? And so I got into doing some English teaching. And so the first kind of big contract I landed was in Moscow. And then I worked 2 summers at this kind of French summer camp that was English immersion for French kids. And did that before and after, did some backpacking in between contracts. And then I got to transfer from the school in Russia down to Latin America because they have different branches all over the world, really, but they're London based. Like
okay,
London,
same
England.
company?
Yeah, it's called International House. So I was working for them in Moscow, and then they have this system where once you're in the school, they'll kind of advertise new jobs to their current teachers, and then if they can't find enough people, then they'll open it up to the mass market of teachers. But
that's cool.
Yeah, so I transferred from there down into Latin America and Costa Rica first, and then that school, they closed that branch down for whatever reason. And then I went down into Ecuador. And then after that, I did a bit of traveling in Latin America, like Argentina, Uruguay. And then I came back up to Canada. And I've been mostly kind of based in Toronto since then. But
cool.
Always try and keep traveling every year. So
that's super cool. And you're a young dude, too. So when did you start teaching English?
I would have been like probably 21 when I got the first job.
Very cool. Did you go to university to be a teacher? Did you go to school at all or anything like that?
I actually did a conservatory theater program. I was like going to get into acting and all that jazz, and then I always planned to go back to it, and I just never did because
that's why we'll make content now. You can just be anybody you want to be.
Exactly.
You get to be an actor.
Right? Yeah. So, but I mean, everything kind of worked together because, in terms of presenting, running a tour, and showing people a good time, that takes part of your kind of speaking and theater experience, and the teaching, if you're teaching about wine or teaching about some specific product. It all these kind of initially seemingly like unrelated skills kind of worked in some way together. Like,
right, because in the wine region you work in, there's a lot of Asian tourism, right? A lot of Chinese people come to the Niagara region because ice wine is so popular.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you tour a lot of tourists around in the summer, and I'm sure being around and immersed in other cultures really helped you translate to those people.
No, it totally does. And on one hand, there's that kind of linguistic familiarity, but there's also even just being able to talk to people, right? Because like if you're in the car with someone for an hour on the highway getting down to the region from the city, you need to talk about something, and sometimes you talk about wine, sometimes you talk about really anything that comes up. And if you've been to their country or their region, or you speak their language to some degree,
people are excited about that.
Yeah, there's always this kind of fun breadth of conversation that can be explored. So
how many times, I always find this so weird when I'm traveling lately, I'm the first Canadian a lot of people have met, which is so weird to me. Did you have that experience a bunch? Or were you?
I don't know.
I'm always so proud when I go around. I'm like, yeah, I'm from Canada. Hey, what's up? I'm Andy from Canada.
There you go. People love it though. Honestly, I've never been a place where people don't have a good initial idea of what Canadians are like. Like they're always like, oh, Canada, like beautiful country or nice people. So I mean, we've got a great calling card to carry around with us. Like almost everywhere I go, they're like, oh, we love Canada. Like, well, what do you know about Canada? And even if they know nothing, they're like, oh, we love you.
So, Toronto! Yeah. Vancouver!
Right? And so...
We're in Calgary. They're like, what's Calgary? I'm like, the Calgary Flames. They're like, I don't understand what you're saying.
A lot of people know Banff, because it's like on the front of every travel book for Canada, because it's just gorgeous. Like Banff, Jasper.
That's true. It's we get a lot of... Australian tourists, Japanese tourists, German tourists, anybody that wants to. It's amazing. I love the winter. I used to be an avid snowboarder. I spent a ton of time in Banff, mountaineering, and the parties you end up with. It's basically like Australia immigrates into Banff, and then it's just lined with German and Japanese tourists taking fantastic pictures in front of mountains. I love it. Everybody's always ready to party, and I tell people, anytime if you're going to come to Canada, if you're going to come visit, come in the dead of winter and come to the Rocky Mountains, because Canada's, it's cool, it's beautiful, especially on the coast, but interior Canada, it's like a lot of places in the world, unless it's -40 and you're in 6 feet of snow. Then you're like, holy crap, I'm in Canada.
Why did I come here?
What did I do? I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
I need some beer. So what are we? We're drinking from Dandy Brewing Company. So this is a Calgary brewery. They're Baltus von Tassel. It's a cherry sour. Great brewery. I think they opened their doors. I've done so many videos about them, so they're gonna be mad if they listen to this. I think they opened their doors in 2014. They really specialize in sour. So cheers. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to try this.
Smells like cherry Coke. More that Bing cherry kind of Hershey flavor underneath. The sour's nicely in balance.
Yeah, it's not too sour. Like, it's refreshing. It makes you salivate, but I've had some sours where it's almost like, ooh, like someone's kombucha left too long, and it's like gonna burn your taste buds. So, no, it's got like a nice malty undertone, like almost like a little bit of a brown toast, but then you've got that kind of nice round cherry.
Yeah, totally. What are they saying about? With a rich brown color, notes of stone fruit, and assertive tartness, this American-style brown sour is destined to be a dandy classic.
Dandy.
Much like the jovial Terrytown farmer, this beer brings a little celebration to the time of year when the air is crisp and the leaves begin to turn. Pair with rich cheeses, bold stews, roasted game, or some dank OG Kush.
What? Is that on the bottle?
No, but that's a cannabis sommelier recommendation. This one, if you've got cherry pie, sunset sherbet, pink panties, any of those kind of Sherbinski cookie fam strains for you weed nerds listening, that's definitely what I would do with this. But this is a very seasonal ale, so the only way you're drinking is if you come and visit me in Calgary, because I got another one stashed away.
You guys got to do it.
Got to do it. It's awesome out here. Great cannabis, great things. So tell me about, it's beers with buds. So we're drinking a beer. Tell me about your experience with buds. What's cannabis like for you?
Well, to be honest, I'm a bit of a novice. So, previously cannabis was not legal. So if you were to come across it, it was like, oh, well, let's try it. You don't really know what exactly you're going to be getting. And so maybe you have a friend that always gets some from somewhere, and there's some consistency there. But now it's kind of interesting because I can go to a dispensary and actually get a little more information and explore levels of CBD, THC, different strains, and even the terpenes. Like, that's so cool for me. The first time I went to a shop in Edmonton, actually, I was there for a wedding, and they had these little boxes. You can pop open this plastic or rubber plug and smell it, and you're like, oh wow, like I can actually smell the difference. So that kind of blew my mind. I was like, this is cool. So I don't know, I'm still a baby figuring it all out, but I'm curious to explore it and see how to integrate it into drinks and cooking and all that kind of stuff.
No, it's super cool, and everything's so strain indicative. You touched on the sample boxes. If you guys haven't been into a dispensary in Canada, cannabis has to be leashed and inaccessible. You have to guarantee that the customer cannot touch it or leave the store with it. So it's in kind of a clear plastic box with if you could imagine like a spice container that opens where you dash the spices out of. That's exactly what it looks like. But I find all those samples are getting old. You know, as soon as you 3 days later and it's the smell's gone. But that's cool that you notice the terpenes. I love talking about terpenes because people are always amazed that when I say cannabis and wine are the same thing. They're made of terpenes, flavonoids, an intoxicant, and water. But with wine, we press it right away to bring the water out, and we hang dry cannabis to get rid of that water.
Okay. Yeah.
They're so identical, and that's why pairing is so cool. But when you touched on terpenes, like I always say the nose knows. And you know, when you smell a great wine, you're like, wow, this is going to taste fantastic. You smell a great beer. But it's kind of hard sometimes with cannabis because, again, all the recreational samples are getting kind of old. And without terpenes, that's really what dictates your cannabis consumption experience, how you become intoxicated. And everybody should know that in the dispensary, they can't offer you any advice about how you're going to feel. And they're also not like super educated. But terpenes, how fragrant it smells, the complexity of the smell is like the modifications of your car. And THC is like the type of car you bought. You could buy a 30% THC that doesn't smell like anything at all, and we'll call that a 1986 Ferrari that some dude daily drove and left in his driveway all through the winters. But you could get a 16% THC that absolutely reeks and is so complex in its bouquet, and that's a Civic that's running 12 seconds on the quarter mile. It's gonna go faster than the Ferrari, and you might even look a little bit cooler because it's not an old kind of rusty Ferrari. Does that make sense? I don't know. That's kind of like a weird way to run around it.
I know what you mean though, because like it's like anything. Like you keep an ingredient, even like you go to a spice store. If you pick up a spice, if you take fresh nutmeg and you grate it on your eggnog, it's going to be awesome. But if you take like your mom's 10-year-old cheap dollar store or like,
yeah, it's oxidized.
Yeah, right. It's been sitting there forever. It's not fragrant. It's not moist. And so, especially with cannabis, I mean, again, figuring it out, discovering it, but I can definitely see what you're saying, that if the bud's been sitting in the box for like 3 days and you open it, smells like, oh, that smells amazing, and like really rich aromas, and then a year later, if they haven't changed those out, it's a
dud.
Yeah.
It's just like that dusty bottle of Everclear sitting on the shelf that nobody really wants until Christmas, when they're going to make limoncello for some reason and try and get their family drunk.
My cousin was saying that's great for disinfecting your clothes.
Oh, man. Oh, man. We're also drinking some wine. So one thing I'd love for you to do is, if you want to taste your wine, smell your wine, and I have some essential oils here. This is Super Silver Haze. Okay. And I think this one is very complex. This is an essential oil, and it's got a lot of fragrant aromas. So maybe just try your wine like a normal, like you'd normally taste your wine. We've had a glass before we came on. You got to get warmed up. And then smell this Super Silver Haze side by side with the wine, and really dig in and try and confuse your senses. And you can even taste the wine side by side and really go quick. And you can even taste your wine and then smell it and see how the wine will change on your palate as you sniff it, just because we can only taste salty, sweet, sour, bitter, umami. but we smell all these complex aromas. And Riesling, we're drinking a Riesling, 2012 Riesling from Kettle Valley Winery in the Naramata Bench in British Columbia. Riesling with a little bit of residual sugar is the absolute best for any of these kind of limonene rich essential oils.
Interesting. So this essential oil is, how would you use this?
We put in a vaporizer. So
Okay.
I got the Puffco Peak right here, and well, you know what? I'm gonna have a puff. So tell everybody more about your cool tour business in Toronto. Plug yourself in. Let them know all your handles too, right here.
Yeah, sure. So I've got a few things going on. So the tour company is called New World Wine Tours, and newworldwinetours.com and Instagram. It's all the same, New World Wine Tours. But essentially, New World Wine can be anywhere in North America, South America, or debatably kind of re-emerging regions of Europe. But yeah, the cool thing is that we've been growing grapes in Ontario since like the 1800s, but it really wasn't until kind of the 70s that we cleaned things up, started growing only vinifera for the most part, a few acceptable hybrids, and kind of getting world-class winemakers and equipment into the region. So yeah, it's really neat to show off that it's a cool climate region. I think for a long time people were like, oh, well, we want to be California, and you can't be California when your weather's not California weather. So finally you get a lot of people embracing the terroir and the climate and saying, oh, this is what we make best, and we're really starting to make some really impeccable world-class wine. So that's kind of the impetus for it all, is just showing off these kind of hidden wineries, because a lot of stuff's not exported outside of the province or the country. And so unless you're there on their doorstep able to taste what they've got for you, it's like, how else are you going to get it? So we also do some different like food and drink tours with some local restaurants and cocktail bars and some awesome stuff like that. And just recently launched a new site called eatingthroughto.com. And so that is a free resource for people living in the city and checking out Toronto. So we're just highlighting some really awesome dishes, some awesome chefs and restaurants. And we're also going to be offering some kind of one-off food events and food tours over the next while. So
also, we're going to do a cannabis and wine dinner, is what you're saying.
I think we could talk about that.
Awesome. We're
Yeah.
going to crush it. I love that you're highlighting New World Wines. I love that your company's called New World Wines. If you're listening, you don't know much about me. I'm a Canadian wine scholar, and I'm obsessed with Canadian wine. And one of the things you said really touched a soft spot, is that you can't get Ontario wine here. Ontario makes phenomenal wines, especially the Riesling. I'm just obsessed with Ontario Riesling.
Some really good stuff.
Niagara on the Lake, Prince Edward County, just incredible stuff. But it doesn't... It's not here because nobody's going to buy it here. We're in Western Canada, and there's no way that our money is going out east, and that's really the reason why it's not being imported.
Yeah.
And it sucks because I have to fly, and it's incredibly expensive to fly to Toronto from Calgary to try these wines that I remember and love. But you know, I guess it's the cost of getting there. I can't get all the Burgundy I want here either.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess life could be worse.
Yeah, and little by little, I mean, I know they're kind of re-looking some trade deals, like within like interprovincial trade of alcohol and other goods.
Do you think cannabis changed that? Because now you have free trade of cannabis across the country?
I think that's part of it, because I think, you know, why are we promoting wines that are coming from abroad and giving them almost special treatment and cuts in terms of the distribution and the taxation, when we can't even, like, I scratch the back of the Western Canada, the Eastern, back and forth. It's like, it's so rare to find a BC wine in Ontario. Maybe you can find two on the shelf, and I can find more like Georgian wine that you can't even pronounce the name of. And trust me, I want all the wines at my fingertips. The more, the merrier.
Totally.
But it's almost counterintuitive. We're like, we've got this country creating great wine, and we've got some of the best barley and grains in the world producing amazing beer. And same thing, like, I've never seen Dandy Brewery in Ontario, because probably the same thing. It'll cost them $3 a bottle to ship it over there, and no one's going to want to spend an extra $3 a bottle for this beer. when
they could buy an Ontario beer, a local
Yeah.
beer, support their local economy.
yeah.
And it's crazy to think Canadians are actually kind of bad at supporting Canadians sometimes. It
Yes.
depends on the industry, but California actually per dollar buys more Canadian wine than Canadians do.
Yeah, that's something that we have to fight a lot to promote in Ontario. Even people, they'll get this wine on the menu, maybe $80 a bottle from California. You can get one for 65 from Ontario. Same grape, debatably same quality, depending what style of wine you like. And I'd never buy an Ontario wine. And you're like,
Because there's an illusion that it's all Baco Noir.
yeah, and it's not. Like,
That's bad stuff, by the way. It's about the equivalent of Marshall Foch. And that means absolutely nothing, especially if you're not a Canadian wine nerd, but they're terrible, and it has a bad rap.
yeah, so it's just, I think it's everyone involved in the industry needs to work together to kind of promote that. Because say, we've got this great wine, but unless people are willing to go out and buy it and drink it, you're not convincing anyone. And so that's part of with the New World Wine Tours is like, whether it's international people or locals, taking people out there, getting them to try wines, not only from big wineries that have beautiful facades and all this stuff,
Yeah.
but little tiny wineries owned by families or boutique winemakers.
Like we were just talking about the Jackson Triggs versus Hinterbrook.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because like some of these wineries, maybe they have a portfolio of 6 or 12 wines, and maybe only 1 or 2 of those are large enough scale production to get onto the shelves of the LCBO.
Right, because most places are 10,000 cases. Like the small to medium size wineries, 10,000 cases, you're finally making money, you're supporting your family. Scaling above that takes a lot more space, a lot more tanks, bottling wine in-house. So that's why I think there is kind of a plateau for that local winery. But do you think it's, labor costs are pretty expensive here. I worked
Yeah.
on a winery. They paid me really good. They insured me. That was nice of them. Do you think one of the things that deters somebody is just the price of Canadian wine? Like even at the cellar door, you see it $20 to $30 a bottle. But when you were in Argentina, it's not $20 to $30 a bottle at the cellar door. And there's this perception that a California wine at $80 is a much more prestigious wine. But what they don't understand is that was probably harvested by very nice Mexican workers. By the way, I lived with 2 Mexicans when I worked in Canada, but it was probably, farmed by underpaid Mexicans and then over oaked in cheap American oak, and then sent up at a poor dollar valuation. And what you're paying for is this thought that it's good because it's from California, where this Canadian, hired the same Mexicans but paid them 10 times as much, supported their family, and gave a nice guy like me the opportunity to come learn, but our wine is the equivalent price. But it's not prestigious because, like you said, we started growing in the 80s. Real Vitis vinifera, and actually trying to get on the map, and here we are almost 50 years later, and people are still laughing. 40 years, sorry. Hasn't even been 50 years. And that's, I can understand. That's why we're New World, right? It's not anything crazy, but what people don't get is the Pinot Noir coming out of the Niagara region is incredible. The Riesling is the first place it landed in Canada. Toss Vineyards, Maury Toss, he kills it. The guy's incredible.
I would debatably say, like, in the New World, Niagara has the best Riesling.
The Okanagan has the best Riesling. No, I'm just kidding.
That might be true, but I've had so few opportunities to try them, other than this one, the lovely one.
We'll have to do a wine exchange.
Yeah,
I think that'll be the thing. We'll send them across the country, even though it's illegal to do this. But you just have to lie. Censored. Yeah, I sent beer out for Christmas presents, and the lady at the post office started asking a lot of questions when she's shaking it. And I was like, oh, they're glass statues I made for my friends. And she's like, oh, they're very heavy. And I was like, yeah, that's because they're glass statues.
Well, I bring like a case of craft beer to my brother like every Christmas because he can't get it here.
Yeah, you fly with it?
Yeah, I just like add an extra bag.
Fragile?
Pretty much, yeah. Because
it's crazy that they don't let you take it on the plane. I hate that. I've given away so many bottles. Just like, oh shit, it's in my bag.
Yeah.
You always make the WestJet Ladies' Day though.
That's true.
Without a doubt.
Free bottle.
No, it's every time, and especially when you buy good juice.
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, thank you so much."
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I got you. Thank you for working hard. I appreciate you.
Yeah, totally.
I wouldn't give it to an Air Canada employee though.
Oh,
I'm laying that smack down. WestJet or nothing.
All right.
What are you flying home?
Get Air Canada.
Sucks to be you.
Honestly, I don't notice a huge difference. Both have been pretty good overall. I'm really lucky though. I rarely get like flight delays or issues. So
WestJet's a Calgary
knock on
company.
wood,
That's why I support. Like these are the things. This is like we talked about supporting local.
Yeah.
These are one of my crazy things. Calgary company. WestJet's a Calgary company. We used to do business with them at the last place I consulted wine with. We got fleet wide on WestJet because we were a Calgary company, and now I'm just I always have a great experience there. I don't know why they started taking the movies out of the headrest though. I do like now. I've been flying a lot lately, and they actually they give you the app, and they're like, yeah, the movies are free now on the app. You can use the Wi-Fi. Before it was like, yeah, connect to our Wi-Fi, then pay $11, and then you can watch our movies. It's such an interesting model. I flew Alaska Airlines for my first time to Chicago.
Oh, really?
Couldn't even cross my legs. For everybody that doesn't know, I'm 6'4", and it was rough.
I can imagine. But why would Alaska Airlines be going from here to Chicago?
I had to go to Seattle.
Okay.
And then Seattle to Calgary. But all Alaska.
Interesting.
Actually, the last flight was WestJet. That was great. They treated me like a king.
There you go. That's awesome.
Everywhere else, they don't want to give me pretzels and cookies. Like, I don't know what I'm asking for. Is it too much?
No,
I didn't think so. It's like, you gutted me on this $700 flight.
Right, and now you can't even get a free checked bag, so pretzels and cookies.
Yeah,
it's like a consolation prize.
I didn't know Illinois had a bunch of wine.
I was just learning about that. Like, it's what's really cool about running tours is you meeting people from all over the world. So we get a lot of people from the States, but also like China, Korea, Japan, and the UK. Some Australians as well.
Actually, U.S. tourists though.
Yeah, a lot.
Does that sound ignorant? I'm like, why would anybody from the U.S. ever come to Canada?
I think it's a mix. Like, we get like some people where it's close enough they can almost drive up, and then others it's like, oh, we wanted to check out a flight from a lot of U.S. cities for $250 round trip. So it's almost cheaper sometimes for them to fly up into Toronto than it is for Western Canadians to get to Eastern Canada and vice versa.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. It blows my mind, flight fares inside Canada. Like, even just to Vancouver, I can drive in 10 hours.
Yeah.
And it's $400 if I book ahead. If I book late, it's going to cost me $600 to come see you.
Yeah.
It's $800 or $900. Like, that's brutal. But I guess we are Canadians, so our dollar's worth about, 20 cents less than an American dollar.
Yeah, at the moment.
So that kind of sucks. Yeah. But I want to ask, I really want to try Finger Lakes Riesling.
Okay.
Have you got to try any?
I've had a couple.
Because it's close to you.
Yeah.
See, this is so crazy. Regionality is insane.
Like, I haven't had a chance to go do a Finger Lakes trip, but I'm actually looking into it. So
awesome.
We should maybe collaborate.
I have some guys interested. I have some really cool people in New York. We could do an amazing dinner in New York and then drive up there and do another setting at like a cottage or like a very cool whatever overlooking something amazing. I'm into it. I'm sold.
Yeah, but it's not that far from, you go down to Niagara from Toronto, it's like hour 20 minutes, and then over from the Finger Lakes, tack on a few hours, but I mean it's like a day or weekend trip away. So
beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful. You just have to go into the States. I worry every time I go in.
Oh, I guess you should.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's like all along the highway there's these signs. It's like no cannabis at the border, no cannabis at the border, and like so.
Last time I went,
that gets a chuckle out of people.
I went to do a dinner with Manny Mendoza, Herbal Notes in Chicago. Great guy, love him. But they were like, so at the airport, they're like, why are you coming to the U.S.? And I'm like, I'm going to do a dinner with my chef friends. It's like, you're coming to Chicago for a dinner? And I'm like, yeah, my friend is a really great chef and asked me to come, and I'm going to eat and stay with them for the weekend. And this guy's like looking at me, and I'm like, oh shit, they're not going to let me in the United States. What should I have said? Mm-hmm. And he let me in. which was great. Thank you, America. I loved it there. Yeah. For anybody listening, for the Border Patrol agent that's listening, I love America. America is absolutely phenomenal. The cannabis is so good. The cannabis culture is so far ahead. Illinois cannabis was so incredible. I was blown away. Shout out to Professor Buds on Instagram for hooking me up with some amazing cannabis for the party. We had like stuff like Jilly Bean and sour pink grapefruit and blueberry clementine. And it was just, yeah, I love the United States. I hope we get that kind of cannabis culture here.
It's weird because I feel like cannabis has been kind of unofficially acceptable and popular for a long time in Canada.
Totally.
You know, like I would always have people for years asking me like, hey, is cannabis legal here? Because they would be like visiting Toronto and just smelling clouds of cannabis smoke, like
especially
all
if you're
over
in Kensington
the city.
Market or whatever.
Yeah, right. And it's like no, it's not. But I mean, it's been decriminalized for so long that it was kind of just like, yeah, it's fine. Like,
yeah,
you'd literally be at a bus stop, some kid like lights up, two like cops walk by, don't even look at him. Like, you know, it's been so kind of just fine for the longest time that now I think it's kind of like you said, like there's a culture, but before it was just kind of like, oh, everyone did it, but there was never much of a culture behind it,
right?
And now I think that more people can get into it, and there's going to be more venues to consume it and different things like that. Like that'll be interesting because I mean, even myself, when I see kind of the more like grungy, dreadlocky Rasta cut aside of cannabis culture.
Stereotypical stoner.
Yeah, and like that's fine, but I don't overly relate to that. And then it's kind of cool. There's a really neat cafe in Toronto, and now I've realized they've got spots all over the country called Tokyo Smoke. Yeah, and so they distribute cannabis in other provinces, but they're hoping to be a place where you're like a cannabis cafe. And I was like, oh, this is like such a nice cafe. Like I've been going there for years just for coffee.
Oh, just to drink coffee.
Yeah, because you can't do anything there now, but they sell paraphernalia and.
Can I tell you a great Tokyo Smoke story?
Sure.
I got to interrupt on this one because it always kills me. I worked at Calgary's high-end glass store, functional glass art, like, you know, stuff like that over there. And so there's a great video of the Tokyo Smoke guys, the guys that own it, and they're like, you know, cannabis culture and glass art has not progressed at all in more than a decade. You can either buy a large format glass dragon or a small format glass dragon, and that's about it. And we're going to make these amazing pipes, and we're going to 3D print them, and we're going to charge $1,000.
They are pretty pricey.
Right? And I saw that, and the rest of the cannabis community that's like into heady glass, this like small 1% of cannabis that I'm so involved in, and I was like, you motherfuckers, you know, like I know guys with $30,000 bongs, you know, shout out to Codicius with the only Quave up down clear Klein in existence. Like that's heady glass. That is not a large format dragon. And I saw that and I was like, oh, Tokyo Smoke, I have it out for you now. But I do see the shop up. It's a nice shop. I don't know if I don't drink coffee, by the way.
What?
Yeah, I used to work for Red Bull, and I used to drink like 8 to 10 Red Bulls a day. And yeah, when I quit that, now coffee's just like gets me going.
Interesting.
Yeah, you couldn't imagine. Yeah, you see me and I smoke my 8 grams of prescribed cannabis a day. Imagine if I was drinking espressos. Oh God! Speaking of that, I need some more beer. So what's your favorite one? I totally interrupted on the Tokyo Smoke thing. Where were you going with that? Do you remember?
Well, just like cannabis culture and the evolution of it, because like for me, it's kind of interesting to see. You know, now I'm curious to see what kind of people,
how it's normalized, who adopts it, who accepts it.
Right? Like
that's why I started the cannabis sommelier.
Yeah,
because I just wanted people to. It's normal. Like you know, I want everybody's mom to feel comfortable giving out joints at the party, just like they're comfortable when you walk in the door pouring you a glass of wine. Mm-hmm. Why is it any different? It's never been in my social circles.
Yeah,
but we were always stereotyped as stoners. Yeah, I never had dreadlocks, but you know, it was like if you came to whoever's house, you're not drinking, you're smoking.
I think it's going to be almost a whole generation, though. Like, I think there's still some stigma with alcohol in certain
Well,
areas.
do you think
and
edibles
groups,
will change that, though? Because this edibles thing is like, I talk to so many people of an older demographic than myself, kind of like that 50 to 80 range.
Yeah.
And they're very comfortable consuming an edible. Like, I make lots of stuff. Ginger candy.
Yeah.
I was like, what's the oldest lady candy I can make? Everybody has no problem eating infused ginger candy.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was talking. My grandma actually, she got hit by a massive van when she was,
Oh my God.
yeah, like in her 50s, and it shattered her pelvis. So she's had all sorts of issues with walking and pain and stuff for years. And so, over Christmas, we're like, oh, you should just try some CBD oil.
Yeah.
You don't want to get high per se, but there's all sorts of uses for cannabis, and so I think probably for her it'll be totally foreign and weird to even confront that idea, because for the longest time she
So taboo.
wouldn't have touched it with a 1,000-foot pole, right? But now she's like, well, I mean, if the doctors say it's good and it's legal and it's going to make me feel better,
I'm in.
Right? So I think, who knows? I don't know if she'll do it for sure, but why not? She's got a consultation on stuff that could help her out. And
it's interesting because, those things should be readily available over the counter right now. Like with cannabis legalization, this is one of the big things that messed up. If we wanted cannabis legalization to work and to normalize it, and I really think that doing it this way was a way to create a fear-mongered propaganda, whatever, media cycle. But we should have been able to supply your grandma day one with cheap CBD isolate. I just read an article yesterday. The going price for CBD isolate in a liquid is $2,600 a liter.
what?
And because of the Congo, a lot of African nations have legalized growing cannabis, and import-export trades are.
Oh, really?
It's actually going to happen. We're going to be just supporting the Canadian wine industry. We're going to be pumping in imported cannabis products.
Huh.
They can make this same product at $100
Wow.
a liter.
But probably no one's getting paid for it.
No, they're getting paid extremely livable wages for where they are in the world, because their money is just worth different value, right? You don't need $100 goes a lot further in, the Congo or Zimbabwe than it does in the U.S.
Yeah, fair.
$100 doesn't get you very far, but when you've been living off the equivalent of $1 a day your whole life, it's different. So yeah, I was reading that they have over 100 or 1,000, 4,000 hectares of all CBD product. And I know the company I work for, I believe we have, there's talks about partnering down in Colombia.
Okay.
Aurora just acquisitioned a place in Mexico that is also the owner of all the Farmacia, which is crazy. So yeah, I think everybody's betting on international legalization in the next 5 years and this massive import-export trade. But then where does it leave Canadian cannabis? If we're producing day one kind of crap cannabis, how do we ever compete when the day that the USA can import?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Canadian products in general, whether it's wine, beer, agricultural products, dairy, everything's so highly regulated, so it can be expensive, but generally when it's from Canada, it's a good product. And so I think
it comes back to that wine list though, 65 versus $80, California versus Ontario in Toronto.
But what you need to be doing is saying okay, well, what we produce is the best, and we need to make sure we have people in the industry
You need to guarantee it's
who
the best.
know what they're doing and producing good stuff. Because otherwise, like you said, with wine, if we're paying very, very high wages and it's, higher taxes and all these things, if you're getting a medium quality product for a high price, then
what's the point? Why would you go
there's
back?
no market competition for that product anymore.
It's interesting to think. I know there is, I have a proprietary 100-point system of tasting cannabis, and I know there is 100-point cannabis strains and cannabis growers in Canada. But in the recreational market right now, it does not exist.
Oh, so it's all going to medical kind of thing?
No,
or what?
it's not it's in the black market.
Oh.
Like, there is incredible artisanal craft cannabis in the black market. People that are passionate, with stories, with 2-3 decades of experience, that are doing things that these big LPs couldn't even imagine. You know, I know the Greg Gardner went to a big LP, and I got to find out what LP he's growing for, because that's going to be one that's hopefully fantastic, because they actually hired a real OG grower. But no, most of it's really bad. When these people can come into the market, everything will change. Mm-hmm. But I think we plagued ourselves by having this year of legalization where we don't let micro cultivators in, and we don't let that 10,000 case a year, small to medium cellar door winery as a cannabis person compete. And that's where the best product is in Canada, and has been the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting. I'm definitely not bashing legalization by any means. I think it's way better than the alternative, because it opened a lot of doors, you know, for us to collab and make something cool and like something different. I can't wait to take a Japanese guy and show him cannabis for his first time. Like, it's so illegal in Japan. I can't wait for that first guy to put it in his hands and let him roll a joint. That'd be so cool.
I actually saw in Colorado someone's offering a roll your own cannabis and sushi event.
Awesome.
So that'd be the funniest thing.
Awesome. I love that. And we could totally do stuff like that here.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know if it would be a hit. Calgary's such an interesting market. Like, you know, we've talked about the events that I'm starting. I've got a dinner on January 26th with the little chef from the Little Truck on the Prairie, gourmet food truck.
Cool.
But it's interesting. I think about Calgary as like this incubator market where if it works here, then it's sure to work anywhere, because there's such little support. Mm-hmm. But in Toronto, something like a roll your own joint and sushi would work no matter what. You'd sell out because there's enough people.
Well, that's what's interesting with Toronto. Like, I think both markets are awesome for different reasons. Like, if you open up something interesting in Calgary, everyone's going to go there because there's just people hungry for newness and like unique options of like, where to go, what to eat, fun stuff to do. Whereas in Toronto, it's kind of like New York, where you could almost do anything. Like, no matter how bizarre and outlandish, there's enough of a niche interest in almost anything. People are like, let's try it. That's weird. Let's try it, you know? And so that's what's fun about being in Toronto, is like any day of the week, you can Google something or go on an event site and try and find something different. And, you know, no matter how bizarre it is or how creative you are, you can be like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, and you're gonna get enough people to come check it out.
So we got to hit cannabis at wine tours for, like, you know, when does the season start? May? Yeah,
May would be kind of when you get amping up into June.
I think we definitely need to talk about how to offer that, like, on a weekly basis, because I think I don't know how often you run tours, like
Yeah, like all the time. I mean, weekends are busier than weekdays, as a lot of things are.
Do you have a van or an SUV or a bus?
Yeah, we use like kind of black car SUV, and that is what we take people down into the different regions. And then, I mean, a lot of the food and drink tours in the city are all just walking tours, so we'll meet at a specific meeting point and then go from there throughout the city. But yeah.
That's cool. But there's no dispensaries there yet, so you couldn't like stop in at a dispensary.
No,
but you could have cannabis.
Maybe. I have to figure that out.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, April's when they're supposed to be opening brick and mortar dispensaries in Ontario. So that is going to be. Originally, it was planned to be all government owned, like the liquor system there, the LCBO, but they've decided to open that up to private vendors. Yeah.
On that note, let's pause for 2 seconds, and we'll pick that up in just a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they've opened up privatization in Ontario. Do you know much about that?
I've been trying to keep up on it. Like, the weirdest thing is, I mean, Ontario's been under Liberal government for a long time.
Now they got Doug.
Yeah, which is always never a dull moment with Doug Ford.
I learned he was a hash dealer long before that Globe and Mail expose.
Yeah, that's like been something a lot of people say. Apparently he and his brother and his whole family's been involved in like illegal hash dealing for decades. So it's odd. It's odd because like you get a certain subsect of people in downtown Toronto, and then you get like the superficie around, and it's like night and day sometimes. And so people are like, why did this happen? And others are like, great, it's awesome. So, but in terms of privatization, I mean, that is the one thing I would accredit Ford with, is saying like, oh, it's nice because the LCBO. On one hand, the LCBO is great. Like,
it's a terrible monopoly, and it's crazy.
Yeah, like it's a very nice experience for the average consumer, I think, because a lot of people go in, they don't want for a lot of unique products, and when you go into an average LCBO, you get representation from wine and beer and stuff from all over the world, and so it's like the base level there is like, oh, it's pretty good. You know, I have people go in there like, oh, this is awesome. But if you're like studying as a somm and you're trying to prepare your palate for blind tastings and find unique products, if you don't find it at the LCBO, you're just like out of luck. And so it can be really frustrating as a food and drink professional or a restaurant or someone who owns a wine bar or something like that. If you want to get your hands on these unique products, you need to go through private importers or just give up.
Well, and it's crazy how ordering works and how liquor deliveries work, because agents can come drop you wine.
Yes.
They're the ones that are coming and peddling. They're doing 50 cases a day to people's doors just to make sure that they get the wine, because it's not going through an LCBO aggregated shipping service, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
So I was excited that they did decide with the cannabis to open it up to private vendors, because like the LCBO has been in place since the 1920s, so it's going to be pretty much a miracle if they ever open themselves up to something else, because they're just so powerful.
For those
so
that don't
rich.
know, I'm just going to step in. So we're in Alberta. We're the only privatized alcohol market in Canada since 1993. The LCBO is the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. They are the biggest wine buyer in the entire world.
Yep.
They're the biggest purchasing power, and the LCBO is owned by the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund. Or they're the controlling stake in it.
I'm trying to remember. It's something like that. But they've got a stake in Ontario wine, for sure.
But it's an incredible monopoly, and only the government has been able to sell booze from their stores with their employees, and it's incredible the hoops you have to jump through just to even get listed in the LCBO. Like you said, there's only so many things, because when did they bring vintages in? They brought this extra section in where they have nicer wines in some select stores. I think that program only started like 3 years ago.
I'm not sure. Like, I've been living in Toronto about 6 years, so I'm pretty sure vintages have been there since I've been there, but it's been getting better and better.
Right, they opened that one vintages store in 2016, like actually by Dundas Square. If you haven't been there, I heard it's pretty good.
Well, now they've got like almost every shop now has a vintages section, but then each shop is kind of on like a 3-star system. So if you're like a 1-star shop, it's kind of like the general list.
Right.
Then 2-star shops have a pretty good vintages section, a little more variety, and the 3-star shops are like big, wide variety stores. And then they started this new kind of Taste of the World initiative a few years back, and so now we've got a few stores that have like a specialty stock. Like on the Danforth in Greektown in Toronto, they've got all this Greek wine.
Greek wines, okay.
And then they've got like 2 East Asian boutiques where you'll find like a lot of like sake and like soju, Chinese wines, and like, you know,
the government is actually figuring out like there's ethnic groupings that want specific things in specific regions.
Yeah, or like Summerhill's got Spanish wine, but then like, for example, the only one in the province with German wine is out in Kitchener, because apparently apparently there's a large German
Germans.
population there.
What a stupid idea, though. Like, wouldn't you love German wines in downtown Toronto?
Yeah, well, that's like the thing that's crazy if you're a somm or like a restaurant professional in downtown Toronto. You're like, we've got this insanely big consumer base. Like, Toronto is, well, downtown is like 2.5 million, and there's verging on like 6 or 7 million in the GTA. And so, like, I mean, we're looking at a market almost the size of New York City, and we only have one wine boutique for German wine in the entire province.
Yeah,
when, like,
stupid.
you know, that's where I feel like,
that's why you only sell weed online after legalization, and there's 65 stores here in Alberta.
yeah, well, and that's what made me excited when I heard they were going to open it up for cannabis, because, like, as much as the LCBO is always improving, it's like you want to get people who are passionate and experienced in a product to be leading the way in the way that these products are sold and advertised and people are getting their education, right? Like, I don't want someone who knows as little as myself about a product being the one to teach me and introduce me to it. I want someone who's spent the last 6 or 10 years touching and growing and dealing with these products to be the head of this kind of educational,
Passionate people.
yeah, right?
It's so hard to find passionate people anywhere.
Which is ironic, because I mean, like, you talk about these different growers doing these like 100-point cannabis or whatever. Like, these are the people that should be propositioned to be leading
the way.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy? They're not even convicted. I say they're not even criminals. They're not convicted criminals.
Yeah.
They're outlaws, right? But, you know, these people have all the opportunity, zero barrier of entry to get in. And when they're there, like, everybody else needs to watch out, because it'll be crazy. But there is that barrier of entry on the license side, and, you know, the government, just like the LCBO, can control it. And one thing I want to talk about with the privatization in Ontario,
yeah
with the cannabis side, so they've put these 25 stores up. They want to put them in rural areas. This is one thing that they talked about. They want to put one in Toronto, and they want to put the rest spread out. Like, you know, Lindsay, Ontario is going to get one, Kitchener, whatever, further out of the GTA, I don't know enough. Petrolia, Sarnia is going to get a dispensary, but anybody in Canada can put their name into the lottery. And so I don't know what the fee is. I don't even know if there is a fee, but I'm pretty sure there is a fee. Can enter this lottery to get one of the 25 dispensaries in Ontario. You know what that's worth if I get that lottery?
Oh, a ridiculous amount.
How unfair is that, though?
It's weird that, like, every week or two things change. Like when they first legalized, it was like, oh, it's going to be all government run. And then, like, a few weeks later, oh no, it's not going to be anymore. And then we're going to open X amount of stores.
But the election happened in that moment, right? Like, so Doug Ford came in, the Liberals went out. Doug Ford was really radical in all of his plans. Nothing changed here in Alberta, except for the fact that none of the cannabis companies could fulfill their requirements. So they had licensed 65 stores across Alberta.
Yeah.
There's like 100 and some odd applications that are still pending or waiting for approval. They just cut it off, and they're like, we'll take the cannabis stock that comes in, and we're going to equally distribute it to all of you 65 stores until you all build an inventory, and then we'll start licensing again.
Which makes sense. I mean, there's no point opening new shops if none of the shops have none. Yeah.
But, you know, it's kind of also ridiculous to have 65 stores that sell exactly the same thing.
That I agree with. Especially when it's privatized, right? Like, if you're a government store and you want everyone to look and operate the same way, I understand. That's like how McDonald's operates, right? Like, you kind of go, they're all
people are hungry.
Well, yeah, and that's just it.
And cheap. Weed is so expensive here. $10 to $15 a gram, no matter what.
Is it?
Yep, all the way up. It's brutal. How are you ever supposed to smoke blunts spending that kind of money? Especially if it's dry recreational cannabis. You know, there's so many barriers to entry. I don't know what it's... I know the Ontario Cannabis Store is actually selling for cheaper than it is in Alberta. And I think that's a big problem with our sin tax that we have here, which is on alcohol and cigarettes. But I saw in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, when I was looking at their cannabis stores, like, it's, you know, there's lots of stuff well below $10 a gram. And I guess that can compete, but here it seems so ludicrous sometimes to be spending the amount of money that this legal cannabis costs. I remember day one, I went live on Instagram. I made a cannabis purchase. I bought 21 grams. I have the receipt right here. And it cost me $331 for 22 grams. And that was really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I didn't even buy all the expensive stuff.
What would you expect to pay
in the black market?
Yeah.
For 21 grams, like $120, maybe $100. Depending on who you know, it might cost you $150 or $160.
Mm-hmm.
But that's still half the price.
Yeah.
If you literally had the worst guy ever who sold cannabis to you gram for gram, it'd be $10 a gram. But you know what's nice? He's going to let you touch it and look at it before you leave the store.
Mm-hmm.
Or before if you don't want to buy it from him, you don't have to. Cannabis store, you pick a name off a list. On TVs, it's so terrible. If you've been into any of them, the TVs scroll so quickly. You pick a name off a list as quick as you can, and then they hand you cannabis until you can't look at it until you leave the store, and then you can't return it.
Mm.
You can return liquor. You can return open liquor. If I buy a bottle of wine and it's corked, I can return it.
Yeah.
Why is it if I buy cannabis, all sales are final?
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's just a matter of everything's up for debate. It's just a matter of we need to roll out a system now and get something operating, and then probably over the next few years we're going to see a lot of changes.
Do you think that was on purpose? Do you think this is my conspiracy that they just did it to make all the bad media? It almost is like a fear-mongering campaign that I see utilizing the shortcomings of rushed legalization.
Well,
I know that's my ridiculous mind. You don't have to agree or disagree.
I see what you're saying. I think the thing about it is it's like anything new and rapidly changing that, a lot of people are, we didn't do enough research, we didn't do enough this. It's but we can't do research if it's not legal. We can't do this if it's da-da-da-da. Well, so it's you kind of just have to go for it. And that's like anything really new, even technology, right? Every week, education and things are changing. So we as a society, we just kind of have to roll with the punches and see what makes sense.
But I think we should look at the parallel of the only other parallel we have is the end of alcohol prohibition, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And when you look at the end of alcohol prohibition versus the end of cannabis prohibition, it's insane.
Yeah.
They went with, we won't restrict it that much. Everybody's already been drinking anyways.
Yeah.
Drinking and driving laws didn't exist, all of these things. And now they're using cannabis legalization as a way to take away a lot of your rights while you're driving. And it seems that it wasn't as much as letting people have the opportunity that they're saying, as much as they can give the golden handcuff and really wrap you in. Now in Alberta, or is this, I think it might be federally, Bill C-46, they can give everybody a breathalyzer test. If you get pulled over, a cop wants to give you a breathalyzer test, you can't refuse if they don't have probable cause.
Even if you're a passenger? Or
interesting. I don't know that. That's a very interesting idea, but I don't think it's illegal to be intoxicated as a passenger, right?
No,
cannabis is legal.
Yeah.
But as the driver for sure, and that's even on a, you don't need probable cause or a warrant anymore to administer a breathalyzer test, and that comes with cannabis legalization. The penalties are crazy for having more cannabis than you're supposed to. I understand you're only allowed to carry 30 grams for a reason, but if I'm going on a camping trip for 2 weeks into the boonies, 30 grams of cannabis isn't going to cut it. Why can I literally fill my trailer full of booze to the point where I could drink and die, but I can only have 30 grams of cannabis?
Yeah.
Is it to create a police state so that all these people have all this right to just come at you, search you, and be in your private space no matter what? I understand they're everybody can grow 4 cannabis plants. Does growing a cannabis plant give the officer the opportunity to just walk into my backyard now?
Well, hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not, but I can see, the U.S. government didn't have any problems with it in California in the 90s, so why should the feds in Canada?
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking like a crazy old, I'm supposed to be the cannabis sommelier. I'm standing up for normalization and all this, but I do still worry. The semantics of legalization blow my mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like the whole point, right? If you're going to legalize something, it's to protect consumers and sellers and all these type of things on one hand, but also, yeah, you don't want to make it worse for people who are using it, because then, I mean, and
it's totally
counterintuitive.
Worse now. It's totally worse. Before, the fact that they didn't privatize and let a guy in a car, like a delivery service, come is, bless you.
Excuse me.
Is beyond my mind. Like, why would you think that cannabis got voted in? And there's all these guys that drive around and deliver cannabis as their full-time job that are business people, and you're not going to give them the opportunity to have a small business. Mm-hmm. Like, why would you think that your customer base is going to change if the guy that they have known for 5 years, 10 years, a year, 6 months... I don't like going to the store. It's way better if somebody shows up to my house and gives me free product.
But can you order online here?
Yes, of course. Okay. But, then you're dealing with the postman who may or may not actually knock on your door.
Yeah.
And then you have to wait a whole other day to go to the Max and pick up your cannabis. And then most of the time it's low quality cannabis in this recreational market. And that's, your guy now has to operate like a dispensary, and he is going to come to you with multiple selections. And the other big discount of going to a guy is the actual discount, right? At the store, you get charged gram for gram, but the standard in cannabis forever has been if you buy an eighth, you get 3.5 for $30. You get a quarter you get 7 grams for $60, and you get a half ounce for $120.
Yeah.
It's never been any different. Ounces are usually 220. You get 6 free grams. Not anymore. Legalization, it's no, we're going to make it $15 a gram, and you have to buy every single gram. Mm-hmm. And how does that defeat the black market? It's especially with an inferior product, especially in Ontario where you're seeing mold and stuff come up in all this cannabis that the consumer's trying. My guy, whatever, over the last 10 years is never going to sell me moldy cannabis. And if he did sell me moldy cannabis, he's going to come back, apologize, and give me extra.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing about that, kind of like I was saying before, we should have these experts being the leaders for education and all these other things. Like, yeah, a lot of people, if they've never been having or like using cannabis in the past, and now they go out to a dispensary, they order it online because they want to try it, they wouldn't even know if it was moldy. And so,
that's a scary thought,
right? There should be a lot more responsibility on the provincial government. It's like, if you guys want to be the ones making all the decisions and deciding, yes, we are only going to limit it to this and limit it to that, it's like, you better be doing an extra good job.
Yeah, have a way better guarantee. Like, the LCBO has such a vetting process and so many, a huge panel of professionals to make sure that wine meets the tipsicity, and they retest it even after the export
it's like lab
test.
Tested and everything.
And that doesn't happen with cannabis. And again, we were talking about this earlier, that you can sample alcohol in a store, but you can't even open cannabis in a cannabis store. So the professional who's supposed to be informed and guaranteeing you of its quality, it doesn't even have the opportunity to look at it.
Yeah.
And that just blows my mind.
But I think people like you who are more in tune with what's going on, and like, it sucks because, I mean, you guys have to put in all the work, right? But as this whole thing evolves, I mean, it's people like you who know more and can have
Share
a voice,
yeah,
right? Like, I guess, like, you guys have to be the squeaky wheels, unfortunately, and put in some of that work to hopefully find a good system.
I have a lot of fear behind that. I worry that the things I say may come back to haunt me, but I really just want to make sure that I hold cannabis companies accountable.
Well, and I think that's like a good mission for any realm of business, right? Like, every every company should be accountable for what they're offering as a service or a product. And so,
right, accountability is everything as an employee, as a boss, as a business.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing though. Like I've seen, for example, like City of Toronto just voted, because each municipality or region was allowed to decide if they wanted dispensaries in Ontario.
Okay.
And that was a provincial thing that got like eradicated. And so like Mississauga, which is the city just west of Toronto, operates in some ways almost like a suburb. A lot of people come in and work downtown. But they voted they didn't want any dispensaries. And so I was like, oh, well, that's great.
How many liquor stores do they have?
Like,
yeah, anyways.
Probably dozens, if not over 100, but that's just it. So now it's like, so you're telling me you as a city councilor of Mississauga think it's better for your citizens or
to drive into Toronto or any other surrounding area.
Exactly.
What a way to take dollars out of the community.
Well, and that was the other thing, right? And like, I understand like there's a lot of unknown variables, but it was good to see that the city of Toronto was like, even the kind of debates in the council, a few people were against it. Others just wanted a little more power in their hands, like on their local level, which, I can respect that too.
What kind of variables are you imagining, though? Because I really don't think that there's any... Like, cannabis has been the biggest clinical trial ever. Thousands of years, people have been consuming cannabis.
True.
And nothing went wrong.
I think the problem is no one knows almost anything about it. Like... You get a lot of people.
The education comes from the couch,
right. Like it's
the guy that smokes the most cannabis is the guy that is the expert, and that's how it's always been.
Yeah, and so like you got a city councilor trying to make a decision, and they're worried about their constituents, like complaining that the dispensary is too close to the schools or all these other things, and they just want to do what's best for the community. They want to probably keep their job, and they know next to nothing about cannabis, and they're the person who's trying to make a decision about it. But it's like, I don't know, like whether it's like we just need better education or briefing on these things.
Right. How does a politician make a decision if they've never smoked a joint?
Yeah.
How do you say it's bad if you've never done it?
Yeah. And that's just like this kind of all or nothing effect, I guess, of legalization.
That's the war on drugs, right? Richard Nixon did a really good job in making people think that drugs are really bad. Mm. It's what 50 years of great media will do.
Well, and not every drug's the same, right? I think that's the other misnomer, is like, oh, well, this is a drug. Right. But like what makes nicotine or tobacco not a drug, or caffeine not a drug?
I was so addicted to pop when I quit smoking cigarettes. Pop is in your face everywhere. Find me one place they don't sell pop, and everybody markets it to kids.
Yeah.
And it destroys your body faster than cannabis ever will.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of things to unpack. But it's like anything, right? Like, well, liquor, there's prohibition. Now it's not. Now it's super normal, and for ages it was so normal. In fact, we needed wine and beer because water was dirty and
unstable. It was nutritious.
Yeah, right. And so it's like literally what kept civilizations alive and on the move for a long time. And then it's like, oh, prohibition, and now it's fine again. But you still have some stigmas from certain people at certain times. Yeah, and like I understand when people say, oh, don't try maybe cocaine because if you got a bad batch, it can kill you. Like, that's totally logical, and it's super scary. But for something that's not going to kill you, that's natural, that's...
Yeah, take a chance. How early do your parents give you a beer? When was the first time your parents let you drink at home?
Well, we went to California, so we tried some wine. I was probably like 8, and I thought it was disgusting. But 8.
They let you. They did it on purpose, though. They're like, oh, he's gonna think it's disgusting.
Yeah, that it worked for a while.
For a while, and then you're like, oh, I remember when I was 8 and I was in Napa, and that was the moment wine touched my lips, and I became the traveling psalm.
There you go. If I knew what I knew now.
Yeah, but it's your parents are. I remember having thimbles of whiskey Friday nights, the cap of the whiskey. My dad gave me a little tiny toot of Jack Daniels, and like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah.
But parents are really, and it's in Canadian law, your parents are allowed to give you alcohol under the age of 18 inside your own house. That's also in the cannabis law. You can give your kids cannabis inside your own house.
If you look at Europe, though, I mean, Europe...
Oh, what a crazy culture. They start watering down the wine in France for 12-year-olds.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, I lived in France for a while. I traveled all throughout Europe, and people drink almost every day. But you see less people drunk out of their mind, throwing up, doing stupid things in Europe than you'll ever see here in Canada. And I think...
Because it's sexy drinking, it's not drunk drinking. I was having this conversation last night watching UFC, and I was like, I don't like getting drunk. I enjoy the beverages that I drink, and the effect of being drunk is like kind of the undesirable part for me.
Yeah. And
the guy across the room goes, I only drink to get drunk.
Yeah. So and I think that's such a North American thing. Like, we're told, don't drink, and even worse in the United States, till you're 21, and then you finally get your hands on it, you go absolutely wild.
Yeah, I'm crushing.
Right? And you hear kids like having to go to the hospital, get their stomach pumped out. Whereas in Europe, it's like, oh yeah, I've been drinking wine at family dinners since I was 12, 14 years old, and it's just normal.
It's a different culture. It's a totally different culture. You have a glass with every meal because that's what you do.
Yeah.
It's just a staple in the meal, like having a green and having bread and having a protein.
Well, and that's the best part about being a Somm, is like pairing up drinks with wine. And I remember that. I remember being in the south of France and they made cassoulet, and they're like, oh, I don't know if we have the right wine to drink tonight. And you're like, it's gonna be fine. It's like,
yeah, just drink it, whatever.
But that's like what an average person who's like just a country bumpkin version in French is like worrying about,
Yeah, sexy drinking. If he gets drunk with everybody at the table after 5 hours and they open a bunch of bottles of wine and have fun and eat and drink and sing and dance, that's great. It's not like going out and hitting 5 or 6 shots of vodka. Like even cognac, how much distilled spirit is there in France? Like
a lot, yeah.
Cognac, Armagnac are really the only two that are coming to mind past like farm liquors. But that's a very fancy thing to drink. When you drink cognac or Armagnac, it's supposed to be a sipping beverage. You're not going out, the result of being drunk is always a desirable one, but nobody's ever going out to be fucked up.
Yeah, they don't really do shots. Like if you go to a dance club, maybe. But like, shots is just not a thing. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah,
you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah, you're getting drunk. You're going to make a fool of yourself.
Yeah. It's
that's an interesting idea when you relate it to cannabis too, because there is no taking a shot of cannabis really. I guess you could take a dab, but once you know the experience of cannabis, how different is it really? Once you're experienced with it, it's just like being drunk. I remember the first time getting drunk, and I had a lot of fear around being drunk. And then you keep drinking because it's a normal thing, and everybody around you does it, and you become comfortable with being drunk, right?
Yeah.
To think that it's not the same with cannabis blows my mind. Everybody's like, oh, I tried it once and I was messed up. It's like, yeah, well, remember the first time you got drunk too? Like,
yeah.
It's just normalization is a long journey, I think, and it will take a whole generation. But you know, to think.
But I think that's what's good with the stores being set up now. Whether the quality's there or not, the control and consistency hopefully is going to be something people feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah, confident in.
Right, because like if you know exactly what levels of certain chemicals you're getting in this cannabis, then you try it once and you try it again, and every time it's going to be the same thing, and then you try a different one, and so you start being able to...
It's a hard idea though, because the legal market that we've created is not like that. You can have a huge variance. Like you can literally... I walk into dispensaries and you're only allowed to call them cannabis retail stores. They're not dispensaries.
Oh, okay. Noted.
And some of the things have they say 15 to 30% THC.
Yeah, it's not overly specific.
And then I'm told that they can have a 5% variance on that. So you're telling me you could have a 10 to 35% THC sample. How am I ever guaranteed that that's going to be
The same.
the same? Exactly. Yeah. And this whole concept of, you're new to the market, so cannabis sativa and cannabis indica, myths. This is total crap that was misclassified and has now taken this huge root. Indica couch is going to get you really stoned. Sativa is going to give you uplifting energy, and you go into a dispensary and they're like, oh, it's 60% indica and 40% sativa, so you're going to be 60% stoned and 40% excited. And this is the
went in knowing almost nothing to a retailer and was asking a lot of questions. I was probably there like 40 minutes just asking questions, yeah, they'd be like, well, this is what indica's like, this is what sativa's like. But then you look at the little cards or TVs around the shop, and it's like, oh, okay, well, but the indica's got off the charts amounts of THC, and this sativa has way less THC, but that's what's supposed to get me high. And like, it's confusing as a consumer going in there. You're like,
extremely. And the terpenes are really what's going to dictate your intoxication, how your experience goes.
Yes, tell me more about that, because like terpenes, like is it just a flavor or aroma, or how does that kind of add?
I'm going to give you this chart beside me while we talk about it.
Okay. Because I heard something about this, what was it? The entourage effect,
here's a good
like
one.
That. Okay.
That one's nice and laid out. And it has all the terpenes on the backside as well.
All right.
So I've got a list here. And yeah, so, myrcene, beta-caryophyllene, terpenoline, limonene, beta-phelidrine, paracetamine, all these different things dictate the way that you become intoxicated and the way that your body, your CB1 and CB2 receptors actually interact with the cannabinoids that you've ingested.
Okay.
They say that myrcene makes the CB2 receptor more permeable, so that's why a high concentration of myrcene, which is that like piney or mango smell that's found in Kush, gets you more indica stoned because it is more permeable on this CB2 membrane.
And that smells a bit like kind of hops type thing?
Hops is humulene.
Humulene, okay.
Yeah, hops comes from the word Humulus lupulus, which is the scientific name for hops. And they found, after testing genetics of cannabis, that it was the same terpene, and so they named it humulene after Humulus lupulus. Okay. But those are sour diesel has a lot of humulene in it.
Okay.
But all these things really dictate like how stoned you get. And so in general, people considered sativas to be high in like beta-caryophyllene and limonene. And these are, things associated with citrus flavors and kind of spicy pepper.
Okay.
And these are these terpenes interact with your body in like an uplifting manner and are supposed to give you energy as opposed to like bringing you into a stoned state.
Okay.
Whereas the indica ones are high in myrcene and pinene, and sometimes linalool, these things that smell like Vicks and Forest and all these different things.
Yeah.
And the way those interact get you very like stoned,
chilled out.
Yeah, they make you intoxicated.
So would this be pretty similar to like getting a diffuser with essential oils, or?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
When you are doing essential oils and you're trying to work about it for anxiety or different aromatherapy methods, that's it. I always refer to cannabis extracts as essential oils.
Okay.
And that's when you get the purest form, and you can really understand like rosin and stuff extracted with solvents. This is the best way to understand your essential oil experience, because these terpenes are what the perfume industry is built on, what those aromatherapy businesses are built on. Mm-hmm. So once you understand those and how that intoxication is going to happen, it makes much more sense as opposed to THC.
Yeah.
And as everything's hybridized as well, like I mentioned, 60-40, 50-50, whatever, that's just because they've been combining different terpenes to get the best genetic factors.
Okay.
if everything's a hybrid, then how can you ever say that, oh, it's 60% indica, so it's definitely going to make you more stoned?
Yeah, at that point, it's almost its own thing.
Exactly. So understanding how different interactions with terpenes affect you is how you're going to really be able to pick your medicine. The nose knows when you start being able to smell Kush, and it's that deep forest and petrol, and you know this is what's going to get you stoned. We call it the gas.
Okay.
Then you know, but when you smell these bright citrus, grapefruit, lemon, lime, and it's just, rip your face off. It's and the long stretched buds, it's probably not going to get you very stoned. It's going to taste great, and it's, the uplifting idea is definitely there.
Mm-hmm. So you do, like, on top of smoking or different things, like cocktails and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you create a cocktail with...
Cocktails are cool because...
And how would that affect, like, a crowd? If you're serving cocktails, like, are they only able to drink one? Or is... You know what I mean? Like, how do you scale that to an evening event?
Totally. It's funny, you mentioned the entourage effect, and I love talking about it because it's... when you eat a salad, there's so many more terpenes than you would ever get, like, smoking cannabis.
Interesting.
Yeah, when you drink spirits, distilled liquor, it's insane, right? Especially with bitters, like, that's all terpenes and flavonoids suspended in alcohol.
Okay.
So when I do cannabis cocktails, like, it's all about microdose. I'm worried about my duty of care and making sure that people aren't, like, super intoxicated. Like I said, everybody's really used to being drunk. Mm-hmm. And so you can serve people kind of a 1 ounce cocktail. You can put a lot of terps in it using different bitters and give them this experience and this connection to cannabis, without actually giving them an amount that's going to make them intoxicated. When I pair cocktails, it's really a great opportunity because a lot of the time I do utilize bitters. Shout out to Token Naturals for giving me some great bitters. And then I can really pair super easily, literally knowing when I use my lavender bitters that it's linalool.
Okay.
And if I smell a little bit of that in the cannabis, it's really going to accentuate it. Just like blending, a Meritage, a Bordeaux style wine, that balance of Cabernet and Merlot, and maybe a little bit of Cab Franc, or maybe a little bit of Petit Verdot, really changes everything. Yeah, I don't even know where I'm going with this anymore. You're interviewing me now.
There we go, right?
That's what Beers with Buds is about.
Yeah. But it's interesting because, like, for me, I think you get a lot of people who are curious about not only wine and beer, but cocktails. And as a sommelier, you need to kind of know everything to some degree, even coffee, tea, wine. And so, maybe that'll be part of being a somm in the future, right? Like, I know, like, the master somms who did the examinations for me, they used to have to do cigars. That was, like, part of what they did.
Yeah, they've taken cigar out, right?
Yeah, they have. But yeah, I don't know, like, terpenes and aromas and all these things, it's very fascinating because you find it in flowers and fruit, in wine and bitters, and then now you have this other whole kind of realm to experiment with.
Totally. And that's why I created the Cannabis Sommelier. And I don't know if you ever read I did an interview in High Times, which was really cool. Mm-hmm. And I gave the definition of a Cannabis Sommelier, which is really important to me. And you touched on it big time, is that a sommelier is a wine professional. A sommelier is a wine steward. Me as the Cannabis Sommelier is only because I trained in wine. I'm a wine professional, and I am a master of cannabis. Mm-hmm. What I'm good at is giving you cannabis to elevate your dining experience. And that's why I'm the Cannabis Sommelier. And it blows my mind when people are using, like, the word sommelier just to describe a cannabis expert, because I think it's such a bastardization of this incredible term that a lot of people hold so proudly and work super hard for.
Yeah, it's tough.
What do you think? You're a somm. You did quartermaster sommelier.
Yeah.
If a cannabis expert calls himself a cannabis sommelier because he only knows cannabis, is that fair?
It's a vague thing. I mean, if there's no proper certification system, I guess, like who's to say what, but
a sommelier is a wine steward in the dictionary, right?
That's true. So, yeah. It's a nice buzzword.
Does it defend you?
I'm very difficult to offend, so.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm like, oh, well, you go for it, man. You pimp yourself out.
You do you.
But no, I think it is one of those things, right? Like people who have a PhD, they want to like put those initials by their title because it's a heck of a lot of work. And so, same thing, even at certified level, that's like, not even advanced or master, but you put a lot of hours in and you do a lot of training and practice and study. And so, who knows? Like, I mean, maybe someone who knows a ton about cannabis can give themselves that term, and there's no educational body to like to monitor that at the moment. But yeah, I think it's something that if you're going to use it, you need to really be able to back it up.
Yeah, tread carefully.
Yeah, because, that's the last thing you want for your own reputation is to call yourself a somm, and then people get in a conversation with you, and they're like, well, this guy doesn't know much, right?
Tell me about Gigondas.
Yeah, right?
And they're like,
what?
Cannabis?
Yeah. So it's but I don't know, like I do see it as, maybe it is a term that could be, because there's like sake sommelier as well, so that's not specifically wine, and just because it's a liquid beverage,
interesting. Okay.
Doesn't mean it can't be kind of
but sommelier kind of started being everything, right? Like you mentioned, it used to encompass cigar. But sommelier is very focused around service. It is. And this is an important thing for me when I have this discussion. I've talked about it in High Times and the Globe and Mail. If you're not part of the service industry, how can you be a sommelier?
Yeah, that's true. Because as a certified level somm, it's going to be way easier for you if you have service experience, because there is a service element to your exam on top of blind tasting and theory. But if you're applying to challenge the advanced or master somm certification, you need to have experience. I think you need a minimum 2 years. Don't quote me on that.
I think it's actually 5 years.
Is it?
If you want to challenge.
Okay. But yeah, so you need to apply and then be invited by the court.
That's what I wanted for my advanced. I wanted to challenge.
Yeah. And that's what you have to do, right?
But I haven't been in the wine industry long enough.
Well, and yeah, on one hand, it sucks if you've been in another area of wine, because it's like you may know a whole bunch, but it is. But I guess if you just want to get accredited in some way, there's the Master of Wine. There's other avenues that you can go that are more academic.
MW, yeah, totally. So if everybody doesn't know, the two most prestigious certifications for wine is becoming a master sommelier from the Court of Master Sommeliers, and shout out to Fred Dame for bringing that to America. I believe it's 1976, if not 86. And then we have the WSET, which is the Wine and Spirit Education Trust, and they offer all the way from 1, 2, 3, and then a diploma course. I'm a level 3, and then then there's a Master of Wine, and the prerequisite to become a Master of Wine is you must have a diploma from the WSET. But in the Master of Wine, the tests are quite different. With Master Sommelier, there is a service aspect that's very important. There's a rapid fire theory where you're being asked questions on the spot. It's not a written exam. And then your blind tasting is 8 wines, where the Master of Wine examination is like an extremely long written thesis, and then you do 12 wines in Master Sommelier. I think it's you do your 8 wines in 30 minutes, and Master of Wine you do 12 wines in 60 minutes. But it's all written, where Master Sommelier you have to speak it.
Yeah.
So the Master of Wine is like if you're an introvert, if you're a nerd, if you don't want to talk to anybody, that's the route you're going to go to become the most accredited.
Yeah.
Master Sommelier, you have to have the finesse. That's what it's about. I love talking my tasting notes way more than I like writing them. Because I'm not as quick. I love the idea when it pops into my mind. Mm-hmm. This tastes like a fruit roll-up that I stepped on in my, light-up shoe sneakers as I was walking through Heritage Park, which is a pioneer village. And you're like, I like saying stuff like that as opposed to just like grapefruit, lemon, woodsy.
I think the main thing about tasting notes, like, you can get pretty outlandish and it's a lot of fun, but you need to have something that means something to you doesn't always mean something to someone else. Yeah, so if you're trying to sell them a wine, or if it's your best friend, you're like, do you remember that smell when we'd like go camping and da-da-da-da? For that person, it's a very useful note because you shared this common
for everybody
experience.
Else, it's useless.
Yeah, and so I think that's something I've learned where for a while I was like, oh, I love using this note, but if no one else relates to it, it's not useful anymore. Yeah. And so you kind of have to adopt a certain level of standardization, but then there's also a lot of things that, whether it's for your own personal help or, with people that or have a common experience to, you can use with them.
No, I know what you mean. I used one that people really started understanding and relating to, and it was a melted, Pacific Northwest Pinot Noir. Mm. Don't steal this if you're listening.
Maybe I will.
It's melted cherry popsicle from the back of your freezer. The power went out twice. It's covered in frostbite. It's got that goop on it, but you peel it back and like the stick got a little too woodsy in the package because it sat at the back of your freezer for like 2 years. And people are like, "Holy shit, that's exactly what it smells like." I'm like, "I know."
Yeah, you've got your like red fruit, your oak, and da-da-da-da.
Right, that like goopy kind of jammy cherry, and it's like I can taste it. I know that memory of that popsicle that I found in the garage freezer. And no, and I tell people this all the time too. It's when you taste wine, it's so specific.
Yeah,
when you do your tours. I'm sure, well, I don't know. I'm sure at first you were like, yeah, I love this wine. Yeah, this is what I think it tastes like. And then eventually you learn that not everybody agrees with you, and it's not worth it's much more important to hear what somebody has to tell you than to tell them what you thought it tasted like.
Yeah, I'd rather like elicit their idea before I give them anything, because that's a tough thing. Even for us, like as a somm, you need to kind of keep it out of your mind that, like, don't jump to conclusions or tell yourself, oh, I smell this, because your gut instinct is that it's a Sauvignon Blanc, right? Like, maybe it is, and that'd be great, but maybe it isn't, and you're going to trick yourself into thinking you're smelling something you're not.
Oh, that's a hard one.
And I try and, like, not kind of implant ideas into people's minds of it, taste it, and then I'll tell you what I think about it, but it's tough to not agree with someone once they've given you an idea.
Totally. Suggestive tasting is like nail it. And I love it when you actually do suggestive tasting and you're like standing in front of women, are my favorite example, and you have 6 women in front of you and everybody is like, oh my god, I never thought I'd taste that, you're totally right, and then there's the one that's like, no, you're wrong, that's not what it tastes like, and you're like, yeah, you're right, like it might not taste like that to you.
Yeah,
but your 5 friends agreed with me, so leave me alone.
But again, it's like some people are more sensitive to things. Like there are, like if you look at chemistry of wine, I did this really cool 2-day chemistry of wine seminar in Toronto this fall.
Cool. Who's that with?
So it was set up by John Szabo, who's
John Szabo's a badass.
But the professor, I'll have to look it up for you. Sorry. Sorry to Montreal. It'll come to me. But he actually teaches a whole like multi-week course at the University of Montreal there. And it's he goes into like chemistry and how like oak contact creates different things, and how esters are formed during fermentation, how the pigments are extracted, and all this kind of stuff. So this was like a condensed version. This is the first time he did it outside of his own like cool. full-on course. So there's still more to learn. But it was neat because, like, sometimes say, even if a wine's corked, some people will notice it better than others. And that's like that's not because you're more talented or less talented. You may physically not be able to notice because your threshold is higher or lower.
Yeah, you're more in tune with it. Women are better wine tasters than men.
Is that fact?
That's fact. That is literal fact, because they have their perception of smell is better. They also have a less filtered expression of that.
I can see what you're saying.
Yeah. No, women are better wine tasters. Shout out to Jancis. You're the queen. I hope you listen to this because I love you and you should come on the podcast.
There you go. Get over here, Jancis.
Jancis, you went on Gary Vaynerchuk. Come on. You know, he shared a bucket with you. I don't know if you ever do you watch Gary Vaynerchuk ever? Or do you know who the guy is?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so he started Wine Library TV.
Okay.
Do you know about Wine Library TV? So
Not
Gary
really.
Vaynerchuk started the first email newsletter.
Okay.
And it was to sell wine.
Okay.
And then he capitalized on YouTube at the early days. So he was the CEO of his parents' wine company or liquor store, whatever. He started selling wine online with Wine Library. And then he stepped down as the CEO and started shooting the worst YouTube videos. Like right at the fruition of YouTube, he set up a camera on the start of every video. And he'd go, "Welcome to the internet's most exciting wine show. I'm Gary Vaynerchuk, and welcome to the Thunderdome." And he would just sit there and he would taste wines. And yeah, nobody knows. Like that's totally how he built his career. Was making YouTube videos. That
I didn't know that.
Absolutely nobody watched.
Huh?
And
But it worked.
it fucking worked.
Right.
And I got into that like years ago. My buddy did a thing for him in 2013, and he put me on to Gary Vaynerchuk. And I've been watching him religiously ever since. Thank you, best mentor I never had. And I love that. I love that he started out as this like the worst YouTube wine personality and got some of his heroes on there, like Jance. So he loves the Jets, and he always used to spit into this Jets bucket. And this is like from maybe 2011. And Jancis Robinson comes on the show. And Gary Vaynerchuk doesn't even bother to get 2 spit buckets. He shares this New York Jets spit bucket with Jancis Robinson as she sits there and tastes with him. And I'm just like blown away, because my favorite story about Jancis is when, I can't remember what house it was, but she shows up in Burgundy. And for those of you who don't know, Jancis Robinson is English. She was the first female wine writer to become a master of wine. She was the first person outside of the wine industry to become a master of wine, especially as a female. Incredible. She's an incredible woman. She shows up at this house in Burgundy, Grand Cru, and there's just a button on the door, and she speaks perfect fluent French. Not Parisian French. She's very good at it. Perfect fluent French. "Hello, I'm a master of wine." And the guy sees that she's a woman. And so he walks down with a bunch of glasses of wine and says, "You have to blind taste these. And if you tell me what they are, then you're in." And she fucking nails it. Every single one. Tells him the year, like, and he gives her like 50-year-old wines.
Wow.
And she fucking nails it, and lets her in. And it's just like respect. I love stories like that. Like she's incredible. She's the best blind taster out there. I've read so much of her books, and to think that she would share a bucket with Gary Vaynerchuk on this shitty YouTube show blows my mind.
That's the interesting thing about social media.
Right?
Right? Like you get all sorts of people, and you can get a lot of pull for not a lot.
I'm excited for everybody to listen to this 5 years from now, when you have the biggest wine tour company in Niagara or the biggest cannabis and wine tour company in Canada.
I'll take it, man. I'll take it.
Hey, you know what it is? You're an entrepreneur. It's all about pulling the trigger, right? If your fear sets you back, that's literally the only barrier to entry of being an entrepreneur is fear, what other people have to say.
Yeah. Well, honestly, my biggest fear was like doing something boring. That's my worst nightmare.
And that's why you're a good entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I wouldn't say it runs in my family per se, but like my parents have dabbled in different things. And my brother, actually, here in Calgary, he has a co-working space called Work Nicer.
Okay.
And so he's been...
I need a co-working space. That's a good thing you mentioned that.
I will hook you up.
Thank you.
But yeah, so they've got like 2 locations here. They're just about to open one in Edmonton. And so like he's been an entrepreneur since we were kids. Like I was probably like 9 years old, and he's like printing off business cards off my dad's computer and like hustling our neighbors to let him shovel their sidewalk of snow for money. Like, it's like ingrained in him from youth. Like, he's just got this entrepreneurial spark. I'm a little more of like the artsy type, but this is good because it's like the mix of like passion and art and food and wine and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, culminates for your passion, right?
Exactly. And I think I kind of realized, I was like, well, you can either work for someone else and do all this and that, or you can kind of offer something really neat to people. And yeah, it's a lot of work sometimes.
So does your brother inspire you? Is your brother an inspiration, like to start crushing it? Did he make you want to do what you did, or did you just send it and you're like, nah, screw you? Because that's totally fair. Nobody really likes their brother that much.
No, I mean, I ask him so many questions. I'm always like, hey, what should I do for this? What about this? What's the best way to market? Alex is his name.
Shout out Alex.
Yeah, Alex. But like, honestly, like, the cool thing about Alex is he doesn't really get high off success.
Okay.
Like, part of the neat thing with his co-working concept is that, like, he's not that excited to be this co-working king or anything. For him, it's all about nurturing the people that are at his co-working space. Like, that's what
on the hustle.
Well, that's what his spaces are about, right? It's like people meeting. And right, like, maybe you're there and you're working on setting up an event for cannabis, but you need someone who's a graphic designer, and it just so happens that someone else there is a graphic designer. And so, like, he's definitely got this kind of like, oh, I'd love to connect you with someone, or like this nurturing kind of style of entrepreneurship where he's like, it may work out for me in the end, but like the whole idea is that he wants to connect people and get people doing well. And so he's always happy to help me, and questions about everything from marketing to accounting to, I don't know, whatever. So yeah, like, I don't know if he was entirely, let's say, an inspiration of what my concept is, but in terms of like being a supporting factor and looking at someone who's decided to step out of the 9 to 5 and do something on their own, you're like, oh yeah, why not? Like,
that's cool.
Well, worst case scenario is like, I just go back to a great restaurant and work for them like I was doing before, and I also enjoyed that. But it's nice to kind of just see where things will go and offer something that you're passionate about.
Believing in yourself feels great.
Yeah, totally. And like, I mean, that's the best part about doing these tours and different things is, you know, people go out with you for the day. They're like, oh, that was amazing. We had a great time. Or like, that was the highlight of our trip. You're like, oh, sweet. You know, that's like the best compliment you can give me.
Right. I remember my wine tour when I went to Niagara. I went and met my fiance Sarah's parents, and we were there for 2 weeks in Ontario, and it was like pretty up and down, pretty rough. And the second last day, I went on a wine tour. I got picked up from my hotel in Niagara and went on a wine tour, and it was the best day of my trip.
There you go.
It was incredible. The guy, I can't remember his name, man, he was like, just talked and talked and talked and talked, and he made my trip. He was so he was so interested in me. I don't want to say he was more interested than my girl's parents, but he was like extremely into it, and it worked out. Like you mentioned, you get a lot more people on the weekends. We did it on like a Wednesday, and he had a big van. Yeah, we were the only ones, and so it was like everywhere we went, it was set up to the nines. I absolutely loved it. Oh, I kept you longer than I expected. Hey,
that's fine. No,
do you have to go?
I want to look up the name of that guy for
you.
The
University of Montreal guy. Yeah, good.
I feel bad, so let me check this.
No, that's good. Well, we remember John Zabo.
Yeah, well, so he organized it, and then he sat in on the lecture and everything. So he'll probably be the one to organize it again in the future.
He's a suave dude.
Oh, he is like the best.
You ever watch So You Think You Know Wine? The Wine Align show?
I've seen a little bit of it.
Okay, it's a pretty good YouTube show. Sorry, Sarah D'Amato, but you never win, and she's bad at it. I got to take my Canadian Wine Scholar class with David Laurison, which is really cool. So it's so interesting in Canada how few wine personalities there are. So everybody knows who these
Well, we're a little spoiled in Toronto because, like, I mean, John Sabo's based there, and then Bruce Wallner, who I actually studied with him to prep for my CMS, because he runs a thing called the Sommelier Factory or Somm Factory.
Cool. Okay.
But that's like downtown Toronto as well, so I know we're a little bit spoiled. I've had people from like out in Ontario, like 2-3 hours out of the city, and they're like, yeah, I commuted every week for like 3 months downtown to take this course with Bruce because I have no other access to these people who are really great.
So either I spent 50 grand on wine or...
Yeah, right. And so, but no, it's really good. Like, you know, we kind of like we were talking about before with people not like repping Canadian things. I think that's another thing we need to do is like just recognize our local talent and play it up.
I love it when Canadians bet big. I hate the show Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
I love Shark Tank so much because it's so like good and cutthroat, and Dragon's Den's like so nice and neat. But I love it when I see Canadians bet big. We're talking about Canadians betting big. The one thing that was on my mind was, when did you bet on yourself? When did you want to like actually do something for you and make that almost your full-time job? Because I know you still are in the Somm world, learning and getting that experience.
Yeah, well, honestly, like I'd looked at some different entrepreneurial ideas and stuff, not even within the wine world. And maybe like 4 years ago, a good friend of mine, Cecile, she went over to Paris and did this day trip from there out into Champagne region. And she's like, oh, it was great. And this guide, she was awesome. And it's like fancy SUV. And I was having a good day. And but the cool thing was the guide was multilingual. So she's like, you know, not a lot of people go to Paris and can find a wine tour in English.
Right.
And because I used to teach English abroad, so I speak Spanish and French and have dabbled in a few other languages.
This is one of my questions. How many languages do you speak?
Well, 3, I would say fluently, and then I speak like some Romanian, a bit of Italian.
Cool. Very attractive as a tour guide.
That's right, yeah. And I've always had this passion for travel, so Cecile comes back and she's like, you should like maybe look at offering some tours into Niagara and stuff, but do it in Spanish or French, because, you know, I don't think anyone else is up to that. So I did a little research and mulled it over, and I'd kind of had this idea to do other entrepreneurial things, but I mean, there's that like betting on yourself, leap of faith. And even just for me, I'd been traveling so much for years that the idea of staying in a place for a long time and committing to something was a bit of a stretch. You know?
Right, that's scary.
Yeah, because I was like, well, I don't know, like if I'm doing this, I could always just go off to Europe or London or Asia and work in some cool restaurant or hotel or something. And so it was a little bit of all of those things, but I kind of mulled it over for a while, did a bit of research, and decided, hey, why not give it a try? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but if it does, it does. And so,
what was the cost to get into your business?
You know, well, I set it up to be as low as possible because, I mean, we don't really have an office that people come visit because most people just book online over the phone. We do a lot of pickups from people's hotels, that kind of thing. So I did everything I could to keep costs low. You know, you need certain things. You need to pay for your website and hosting, and you need some insurance and some different stuff like that.
Did you buy a new car for it?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lease or buy?
I ended up buying because the amount of mileage I have to put on it is very high.
Because you're picking people up from
Toronto
and like taking them out to Toronto.
Exactly. So
and that's a 2.5 hour and a half drive?
So Niagara's about an hour and a half, and then like if we go to Prince Edward County, it's 2 hours. So
okay, so you buy a new car, so that's 50 grand on an SUV.
Yeah.
I guess over time. But it's better than leasing and paying the miles on it.
Yeah.
Good website hosting. They can book, you know, $500,000 for the year.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So, like, I mean, overall, pretty low startup costs.
Plus, you have a car you can drive all the time.
Yeah, you can use it. I mean, Toronto, it's not even worth it half the time, but it is nice to have for certain things, like getting away for weekends or picking stuff up, dropping it off, or events.
Kind of like what you do for work, yeah.
Exactly. So it pretty much is an extension of it. So, but yeah, so I was like, I'm going to give it a go. And I kind of had to realize, I think we're in a generation now where everyone really, really wants immediate satisfaction and gratification.
Nobody's patient.
No, and I mean, I'll be honest, that's probably one of my biggest flaws is I'm not the most patient person. So, I do want gratification. But I also realized, especially the longer I've been doing this, that everything takes time. And even when things happen quickly, they're never as quickly as you really want.
So the business didn't work right away?
It did. I mean,
so you started making sales right away?
Like, this is the thing. I never lost money per se.
Right.
But there's also this, you're like amping up speed. So if you had an investor who's willing to dump $100,000 into your business, I'm sure they would have grown much faster than I'm growing. But
I don't know, maybe not necessarily. I think there's only so many customers for it, right?
Well, that's true too. But I guess it's just like you're building up your reach, you're building up your reviews, the fact that people come across your website and they think, oh, yeah, this is a company I can trust. newworldwinetours.com.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so like, it's like anything. If you're researching a trip or if you're going to buy a product and the website doesn't instill confidence in you, then you're not sold on it. Yeah. And so for us, it's like you need to build up reviews on TripAdvisor or other big sites that have a big credibility already. Yeah. And so it's a matter of building that up, word of mouth within the city. One person checks out our tour and then, they tell their friend who's organizing a bachelorette or gifting an anniversary or wants a special thing to do this weekend. And then they check us out and then they love it. And then,
it just goes. This summer is going to be crazy. I see, honestly, as we talk about cannabis and wine, cannabis tourism is going to become insane in Canada. Canada's way cooler now to come to than Amsterdam.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like every stoner kid's dream just went from like, I'm going to turn 18 and go to Amsterdam to I'm smoking Canadian cannabis, or I'm coming to Canada because it's way, well, I don't know because I've never been to Amsterdam, but it's beautiful here and it's awesome and it's like a lot bigger than going to Amsterdam, and especially if you're not into the red light district or raves, and cannabis is the only desirable part about Amsterdam to you, it might cannabis tourism can become huge here. Like,
yeah, well, and that's like, it's exciting to meet you and pick your brain, because I mean, Toronto is in a really interesting spot right now, because for the longest time I feel like no one would ever plan just to go to Toronto on vacation. Like, it was like, oh, I'm here on business, I'm here for this.
Totally.
But it was never the highlight of a trip. And now, like it or not, we've got a lot of publicity from artists like Drake or Justin Bieber. Mm-hmm. But not only that, like, the city's redesigned all the parks and they've added in new trains and an express train to the airport, and they're building a new convention center. And like, so everything in Toronto right now is really like upping its ante.
It's pretty beautiful. Like, when I went out to Toronto Island and on the ferry and I rented bikes and I stayed in Kensington Market, like, it was a cool cultural experience. Like, there is not that culture here. It was very awesome. It was a cool vacation.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think like that's kind of the exciting thing right now is that people are starting to recognize that, and people are making it the highlight of their trip. Totally. Whereas before they're like, well, we want to see Niagara Falls and we'll spend a day or two in Toronto or something like that.
Yeah, Niagara Falls is kind of boring. Like, you look at it and you like looking at it and you're like,
yeah, it's like totally magnificent, but
it's amazing
for an hour. Yeah. And then you're like, well, now what? When
we went, we had a room at the Ramada on like the 22nd floor, looking at the falls.
Yeah.
And so we booked it. We got into our hotel before as soon as I got up to the room, I'm staring at the falls. And I was like, oh, it's great. And we hung out and we smoked a little and drank a little in the room. Sorry, Ramada, don't listen to this. I'm good now. A bird almost flew in the goddamn window. That was terrifying. Anyways, thank God for Sarah. She smacked the window closed and the bird hit the window. But we stared at the falls, and then I was pretty quickly over Niagara Falls, and then you get close to it and it's so cool how it's so loud on one side, and then on the other side it's like almost quiet.
Yeah.
But you're right beside it and you're like, oh, I can't see how epic it is. And I didn't go on the Maiden of the Mist, which I was a little upset about. I kind of wanted to do it, but I do
enjoy that.
Yeah, you've been on?
I've been, I think, 2 or 3 times. Like once when I was younger with my family, and then another time with some coworkers, and one other time with some friends.
Awesome.
It's cool because you're like in the roar of the falls, and they give you a poncho, and it's just like.
But they pack you in, right? Like
they do. I would suggest like go early or go late, because like come 10 o'clock to about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, you get all the tour buses.
Right.
If you get there like bright and early, like 9 to 10 a.m. before 10, then yeah, it's not so busy. And
what fun is the Maiden in the Mist if I'm not drunk though?
Well, then you can do the evening cruise.
Oh, is that what it's like? I worry about the evening cruise. Do they run it in the winter? Because I bet nobody's there right now.
It's I think this year it was like November 31st or something was their last day.
Okay.
It changes depending on how the season progresses, but around then
we're gonna have to throw a party in Niagara Falls, like a cannabis and wine dinner, because it's such a ridiculous city. The craziest thing to me was that there was no good food.
No, it's all chains.
It's terrible. I ate at TGI Fridays. I've never eaten at a TGI Fridays in my life.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it'll change slowly, but it kind of started as this like American motor vacation for families. And so I think what happened was like you have the falls and they're a draw, but then you've got these families, so you want something interesting for their kids to do. So they opened like
Ripley's
mini golf and Ripley's and haunted houses. And so the main strip there called Clifton Hill, it's like this gloriously tacky.
Do they have a red light district there?
No.
Because, Niagara Falls would be a great Amsterdam.
Like they have casinos and stuff, but
two casinos.
That, yeah.
Sarah won like $600 at that casino. Oh, she crushed it.
I don't have luck like that.
I literally, my first tattoo was a lucky tattoo, and you know what? I feel like I am super lucky.
You've been regretting it ever since, or no?
No. I love that tattoo, but like I've never like. I feel like my luck. I got like different luck from it. Like I got really lucky that I figured out what I wanted to do and what I got stoked about. But I never wanted the casino.
That's what I always say to people. I'm like, I'm really fortunate. I've got a great life. I enjoy a lot of things, but it's not like dumb luck. It's not like I enter my draw and I won a car or something. I
picked what I wanted to do years ago, and I started like eating shit to figure out the best way to make it work. And then through that process, the idea got a little bit bigger, and here we are.
Yeah.
No, people, it's, instant gratification. It's a really weird world. If anybody thinks there's such a thing as an overnight success, like, by no means I don't feel successful. I feel like life is good right now. I enjoy what I'm doing, but there's definitely, the cannabis sommelier wasn't overnight. Anybody that's like, oh, I want to make YouTube videos, but I can't. It's like, I don't want to make YouTube videos either, but I do.
Yeah.
And it takes up a lot of time. And now we're doing podcasts, and it's me that's going to edit the podcast, and I'm going to put this all up. And so there is no overnight success. If you hear this is the first, second, third episode, there was lots of hours put into this. You didn't just come here out of nowhere. You didn't just show up at the door. Thank you so much for coming and chatting. But
no problem.
No, overnight success is a joke. Instant gratification doesn't happen. You got to work hard for what you want.
Well, even people that are seemingly overnight successes, where like, all of a sudden they are a smaller actor and they become a star, or they have 10,000 Instagram followers and all of a sudden they end up with 2 million. Like, these things happen, but it doesn't mean they didn't already put in a lot of work to get to that initial like average phase.
Yeah.
And then they had to be doing all the right things with the blind faith that hopefully it would work out.
They were consistent.
Exactly.
Here's what sets everybody apart. And if you listen to this and I think you're trying to hustle or do whatever you want to do, the biggest thing that'll set you apart is being accountable, like we talked about earlier, and being consistent. As long as you show up and you're consistently accountable, you'll succeed in no matter what you want to do, I think. But I've been fired from more jobs than most people, and I'm, not very old. So, take my word for what it is.
Well, I haven't been fired yet, so...
No? So, you should be preaching this to everybody, because I've been fired like 12 or 13 times.
I don't think I've had that many jobs.
Oh, shit. I've had so many jobs. I can't even tell you how many jobs I've had. And you know what? The best part was I got to work with a lot of shitty bosses and a lot of great bosses,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes you realize like the kind of person you want to be, what you aspire to be, and where you want to be. My first job was as a gymnastics coach.
Really?
Great job. I was a competitive gymnast for most of my childhood. And then I worked at Subway. And Subway, you know, I went to the staff party at Subway, and those were the first people to ever get me drunk and stoned. You know, I was 13 years old.
Oh, dear.
Grade 9 maybe. Oh, so I might have been 14 actually. And they got me lit. It was incredible. Like, as soon as I sat down there, my mom dropped me off. Me and my buddy Peter Wang, like the most innocent Chinese kid you'll ever meet. And, yeah, they started smoking joints in the living room, and then they were giving us liquor, and I was like, oh, this is incredible. And Peter Wang dipped. He was like 40 minutes in. He's like, oh, I can't be here. My parents are going to get me in so much trouble. And
the CEOs at Subway right now are probably like having a panic attack.
No, these are franchisees, whatever.
Okay.
They paid me so good. I was 13, 14 years old, and they were paying me $15 an hour. They gave me unlimited food. Let me take home unlimited drinks.
That's a good wage for that age.
It's incredible. And you know what that made me want? It made me want more, because once you leave that job, and I kind of left over some like ridiculous stuff. I just went on vacation, and this one lady got fired who made the schedule, and then I just never went back to work because I was like a kid and I didn't really care that much. I had money, and it was just something that disappeared. But like, so I guess I never really got fired. It just kind of stopped happening. Subway, do I still work for you?
Are you on the payroll now?
Am I a sandwich artist? Like, where are my T4s at? I want stock options. I've been an employee for more than a decade now. But yeah, and then, oh man, so many car industry jobs. I was a plumber at one point. Never got fired from being a plumber, but I hurt myself really bad. Worked in a bunch of restaurant jobs. Got fired from drinking behind the bar, because that's it happens. If you're gonna be a bartender, like, you end up drinking behind the bar.
It happens a lot. I think like that's like a really gray area with restaurants where, I mean, obviously you need to be able to be composed and do your job successfully. But
there's also rapport building, right? Like, it's just like I sell wine now.
Yeah.
And how could I sell wine if I didn't taste wine with somebody?
Totally, right? And like, I mean, you see a lot of bartenders in downtown Toronto doing that with their regulars. Like, they're not necessarily getting totally wasted.
Shot of Jameson,
but like yeah, they do. Yeah, totally, and it's always Jameson.
Yeah, that's the bartenders.
But yeah, right, and it's like, they're gonna go to the bar next door if the bartender's gonna like entertain them better. And I mean, that's maybe something we address as an industry if you don't agree with it, but it's a part of the reality of it. That's
okay. That's the service industry. There's a guy that you want to hang out with. There's a guy that you don't want to hang out with.
Yeah.
And if you're by yourself, with your buddy, like, there's only so many great bartenders. And it's hard to come across a great bartender, I feel like.
It's true.
I can't wait to start guest bartending at places. I'm starting to book like some cannabis cocktail parties and stuff. I'm so pumped because I'm getting so much more into it. Oh, love it.
It's a fun thing, right? Like, I mean, being a bartender, you always have to be on, which is like the interesting thing about being in the service industry.
Right? You work in the wood, you got to be slick, you got to be approachable.
Yeah. But I don't know, you develop a personality and people expect to come see you and they get excited to see you and they want your recommendations. And
regulars are the weirdest part of the bar industry. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize.
In both like good and bad ways.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, it's different as a guy versus the women I worked with, especially at Earl's. Yeah. A lot of guys would show up every day just to go talk to one specific girl, where people would just show up every day just to drink with me. Mm. Or at Original Joe's, there's a lot of just, drunk regulars.
Shoot the shit, speak about sports.
Yeah, they don't care what you're talking about. They just want somebody to like interact with, and they want to get loaded, and then they want to go home. And it's usually in their car, which is the saddest part.
That's not good.
There's only so much you can say or do. It's one interesting thing. Every time people come and visit Alberta, there's like a really big drinking culture here.
Yeah.
And love it or hate it, it's just one of those things.
We're super strict in Ontario about that, because like the restaurants are liable. So if you overserved someone and they didn't get home safe, then you're basically on the hook.
You're only 25% on the hook in Alberta.
Oh, really? Yeah. For us, it's like it's pretty scary. Like, you got to be careful.
But I understand,
which is good. Because I mean,
I serve people cannabis, and that's one of the hardest things that I'm concerned about when we talked about cannabis cocktails earlier. Is I'm always worried about my duty of care, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do I make sure that you're not overly intoxicated?
Yeah.
And that's why I like to let people have puffs, and why I'm gonna serve essential oils as an aperitif and digestif now, because I want to see how intoxicated you become. And when you inhale cannabis, especially essential oils, within 3 minutes, I can see exactly how intoxicated you are. 10 minutes, there is absolutely a definitive answer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's always hard to think about your duty of care and where your line ends, because a lot of the time, like, people don't care. They're more than willing to serve you multiple bottles of wine, but they're never going to ask, even though they should, how you're going to get home. And it's always a hard thought. Now you're down at my house right now. I live in the middle of nowhere, almost in Calgary. Like, I'm 2 minutes from the city limit. You're going to go south to Lethbridge, and it's a straight shot out. It costs a lot of money to get downtown, and I'm not admitting to drunk driving by any means, but it's a long cab ride from downtown to here.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's something I like take for granted living downtown, is that almost anywhere I go out, I can spend like $12 or less on an Uber to get home. And so I would never dream about drinking and driving, because like it wouldn't even be close to worth it, nor would I have probably paid for the parking costs more than the cab downtown. Right. So it's just like I almost never drive in the city.
See, that makes way more sense. And when I lived downtown in Calgary, I didn't own a car. I stopped. I just rode my bike everywhere, and in the winter, it's, I'll take a smart car or I'll Uber. Mm-hmm. That's not a reality living out in the boonies, which is it's kind of the trade-off. You can have space to have a podcast studio, or you can live downtown and not admitting to drunk driving, never drunk drive home.
There you go. Yeah. Well, this is in no way condoning it, but I mean, everyone knows their limit, and so I mean, you just got to be careful.
Well, it's 0.05 in Alberta.
Yeah, but you can't breathalyze yourself, right? So I mean, if you're 0.05 or 0.051 or 0.049, I mean, like, how you feel is a much more subjective brush.
But then, interestingly, so like, I'm a medicinal cannabis consumer.
Yeah,
I have an 8 gram a day license. I'm going to consume my medicine.
Yeah, but now you can't drive within X amount of hours or whichever, right?
The day Health Canada sends a pamphlet with your medicinal cannabis, and it says it's at the discretion of the officer if you're impaired or not. Which I understand, because if I was taking anything else, cough medicine, it's at the discretion of the officer. But now it's kind of a hard compound thing. If I have a beer and I've consumed my prescription medicine, am I a criminal?
Well, criminal might not be the best term, but I mean, you might be.
I might go to jail.
Yeah. The thing you really, because there's self-safety, and then there's the fact that you're on an open road where anyone else could be on it, right?
Right. And I would never get behind a wheel if I thought I was gonna hurt myself or somebody else.
Yeah.
And but the interesting idea is that I might need my medicine to feel safe that way. If somebody's consuming cannabis for anxiety, imagine somebody gets prescribed cannabis for their driving anxiety. And then you tell them that they're impaired because they consume cannabis before driving. I don't know. Back to the stupid semantics of legalization.
Yeah. Then you're like, oh, I guess I'll never drive again.
Yeah, it looks like I'm taking Uber. Honestly, if it was up to me, I would love to have a driver all the time. At some point, I'll make content 24/7, and I'll just have a driver.
Well, that's the beauty of big cities and transit systems and all these things, right? Like, even in Toronto, I think North America has this love of the automobile, but honestly, like, you get stuck in traffic, you waste a lot of time, it's expensive, there's insurance, you can't drink, you can't smoke, you can't da-da-da. Like, I just don't know why people are so married to their cars. Like,
because you used to be able to drink, smoke, and fuck in your car while you sat in traffic.
I suppose.
The
But
1950s were awesome.
do you know that?
Fuck yeah. Ask anybody's dad. They finally started making money again. Everybody had a new car. Everybody was getting drunk.
But I think that's the problem, is like we're kind of
Stuck.
like
Yeah, in that
stuck in this
mentality.
idea that, oh, that was so romantic, that was so cool, I want to do this, my freedom, having a car. It's like, it's kind of like being house poor sometimes, where it's like there's a freedom, but there's also all the consequences. And so
How do you solve the problem?
um,
Sitting here, like as we sit at this house, how do I solve the problem of me having a car?
I mean, it's really tough here because you're in Calgary, and like
Yeah, I guess
I'm
that's
honest, like the transit system here is
It sucks.
pretty junk. Like,
And it's real cold, and it's really
and that's the thing.
far-stretched.
Like, even in Toronto, like, I mean, in the summer, if something happens and the streetcar is not running or it's delayed,
Oh, there's a streetcar. That's cool.
yeah, and so, okay, I walk 40 minutes to get home on a summer night, no big deal, or I Uber or taxi or whatever.
Right.
But if it's like negative 40 and you're freezing, you're not going to walk home
No,
because
you're gonna die if you do. It
Yeah.
sucks. I've been there. I've walked home in the middle of the
Yeah.
cold winter night and been like, "What am I doing with my life?"
yeah, and so your options like pay a bunch of money for a cab or
Drive your car.
drive your car, and like, but that's like where I want to see cities. It's not that cities are responsible, but I think cities should be, as they get bigger, investing more in public transit, and then citizens need to use that transit.
Well, yeah, that's the hard thing. They have to. If everybody who spent 50 grand on a car every year, or 100 grand on a car every year, was putting that money back into transit, and I don't know if you've seen Elon Musk's idea with the underground.
Oh, it looks magical.
Thing. Yeah. So Calgary Transit is all above ground. It's right on ground level, runs parallel to all the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Such a terrible idea. Creates congestion in the traffic having a train. What a stupid idea. Everywhere else in the world, put it underground. But now we don't reach any outlying areas. The GTA, the Toronto Transit's great because they go to like 2.5 hours out of the city now, right?
Yeah.
Like they're really going far to service those areas that weren't able to get there before, were inaccessible. Whereas Calgary, I'm not far from a train station, but I'm still 15 minutes from a train station.
Mm-hmm.
12 minutes from a train station. Like, what good is that? If there was interconnected underground networks that met at a central point, like the New York system or the Chicago system ran, and I could go in all these different directions, I definitely do think you could solve a lot of traffic issues, because it gets getting fucking bad here.
Well, the irony is that people, even in Toronto, but like here even more so, like they're like, oh, it's so expensive to invest in these projects to dig underground. It's like, yeah, but we're in like the prairie with no major water sources and anything. Like, it's the easiest place to dig in.
Yeah, it might be hard clay, but like if you make the right tool.
Yeah. But again, it's like making sure if you're going to invest $50 million or more into this project that you're
Oh, it's probably like $100 billion project, whatever.
right. But then people need to come and use this system.
If you build it, they will come.
It's true.
Right, if you have it, they'll use it. I think the collusion.
The other
It's too
tough
deep.
thing,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna pitch this in there, but
Get
like,
it.
I mean, with conservative politics prevailing a lot in Alberta, you get a lot of people who are always,
We're an NDP government, bro.
well, right now, yeah, but I mean, there's this idea that people are like, well, I want this kind of financially conservative plan. And so it's pretty tough
Right,
to
keep the money in the
convince
hands of
people.
Albertans.
Exactly, right? But I think it's like anything, people, they buy a mortgage, they finance a car, they do this. It's like, you can't just miraculously save up enough money sometimes to do everything. So you have to go into a bit of a deficit and invest in some of these long-term projects. And I mean, if you're 50 now, it may never benefit you, but
I think it will.
I guess.
If you're 50, you got like, 30 more years, 20 more years? Totally worth it. Spend your money. Don't die with it, old man.
But, well, and that's just it. And so I'm like, with these infrastructure projects, they're kind of unpopular because we're like, oh, we're going to spend a ton of money. It's probably going to be a pain in the ass because it's going to be making a mess and things going on downtown in the city. And
Right, and the generational wealth is kind of gone.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not getting any money It's kind of like dude's parents immigrated, built something. The next guy, either he made it or almost made it, or his next guy really made it. That's like your grandfather, and then your dad or his dad pissed away most of the money, and now we're back to square one, where instant gratification is the name of the game. And it's like, oh, why doesn't it all work? And nobody realizes that great-great-granddad in 1850 like literally ate shit and was a potato farmer, and because he stumbled across a great idea and like gave everything in his life to it.
Yeah.
Oh, the internet blows my mind.
I know. And it's like, I want both things, right? Like, I want great things now, but I do have to recognize that, like, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. Calgary's not going to be built in a day.
Yeah.
And so...
Takes forever.
It always takes forever, right? Like, I mean, even when I was in Ecuador teaching, that was almost 7 or so years ago. I was there this past April to meet up with some friends, and you know, they had started working on a subway line in Quito. It's still not ready, but it's almost ready.
Ecuador speed, hey?
But, I mean, like, you know, you're burrowing through mountains. You got to do this. There's politics. But it's still going to be worth it, even if it takes a decade.
Yeah, when it's done.
That's just it. And, you know, like, it sucks for those Quiteños living there for 10 years, and it's still like, oh, it's still being dug, and it's a pain, and it's like, oh, my road's blocked because they're bringing construction vehicles in here. But when that thing finally opens and like people get to use it, it's gonna be amazing. So,
man, I want you so badly to start a YouTube channel this summer with
What?
like this season of your New World wine tours, and I'd love to just see, like, you know, it would have been cool to see for like the last 4 years every summer, and like the up and down and going back to work, whatever. Because I know it's going to be super successful, because if you build it, they will come, right? As long as you're consistent and accountable. And it'll be crazy to see. I have a really good feeling that this summer is going to be the summer that everything like explodes. You know, all the ducks are in their row. It's ready to go, and I would love to see you doing it every day, filming, taking people to those wineries, even seeing the progress of the grapes, the different people visiting you. Like, I think that's such great stuff. I love wine. I love what other people have to say about wine. So
I'll be working on it.
do it, man. Get the DJI Osmo Mobile.
Is that the thing?
I got one for Christmas. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
It's like a gimbal. You could just walk with it. You could take it anywhere on any tour, and you just you look like you're a pro. And, you know, I love the idea of vlogs. I love the idea of seeing people grow, because, again, instant gratification. Everybody thinks it just happens.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see the plight. That's what I'm really liking about the idea of the podcast is, with my YouTube channel, you only get to see like 10% of my actual personality. Most of it's just
curated.
Me. Yeah, I'm tasting wine. I'm doing cannabis tastings. And I get to make like a few jokes or give you a little bit of my personal life here and there. But the podcast is like a long, you know, whatever, 2 hours, 3 hours of us talking. And after 100 episodes, like, I think people are really going to understand who I am.
And it's almost like a diary too, right? Like, you can go back and be like, oh, that was me like 100 episodes ago, or like,
no fucking way I'm going to go back and listen to myself for 3 hours. I can promise you that.
And then how could you expect other people to listen?
Because I think there might be good insight. I think there's, you know, it sounds ridiculous. I love Gary Vaynerchuk. I say this all the time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lazy people. Like, I'm lazy. I love being lazy. Laziness is like inherently human. And people want to listen to this conversation and do absolutely nothing and take little pieces of it, and they might feel inspired, or you know, they might just enjoy our conversation because they like wine, or they like cannabis, or they like the industry, but they're still gonna sit there and waste their time listening to it. And you know, it's not a bad thing. Like, people are always going to consume content. I watch a lot of TV.
Yeah.
I want to make TV shows because I watch thousands of hours of TV every year. I feel like I waste so much time staying up late night. And it's and I know I should be like working or doing whatever. I've always been doing music or yada yada yada.
Yeah.
but I love being lazy. I love spreading out and doing nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, everyone needs to recharge, and on top of that, I think it's tough to want to work when you could not work, right? Like, I often talk about vines like this. Like, vines, the best wine comes from areas where they've, like, given the worst soils, and the vines have to work the hardest.
They're stretching and they're stressing.
Exactly, right? And I think it's the same with people. Like, if you give a person, like, money and food and a comfortable place to live, it's like, yeah, like, what on earth would compel you to do more when you've basically got everything you want?
Adversity fuels it.
Exactly, right? And so I think that's, like, the tough thing, you know, for you or for me. Like, if everything's going pretty well, on one hand, you're like, oh, I just want to, like, chill and have fun. But that's also a vital part of being human, is, like...
What do you want the most? Do you want to just, like, be able to chill and have fun and do something you love? Or is it about, like, meeting an end goal?
I mean, it's less of, like, a singular end goal and more of a, well, it's like a progression. I don't even know what's going to happen in 10 years. And so for me, it's like an exciting discovery.
What about 2 years? Like, this summer might be crazy. We're talking about cannabis tourism.
Yeah.
You have a built tourism company, and there's this massive new market. How do we figure out how to, like, well, I can't talk about it on here, but how do we figure out how to have a limousine or whatever your service is, where the driver has no chance of becoming intoxicated, and you can actually let people consume cannabis in the vehicle?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's
a game
be
changer.
done, I think, as long as you have, like, the right setup, right vehicles, that kind of stuff.
That's a game changer.
It is. So
Greyhound went out of business.
yeah, that's bizarre to me. I mean,
That's
I guess
not bizarre to me. When was the last time you took a Greyhound bus?
Well, that's true.
But think about how the cannabis. I'd love to buy angel investor. Shout out. Come give me, like, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hey, Gary.
Yeah. We're gonna buy all the Greyhounds. We're gonna turn them into cannabuses. We're gonna take all the Greyhound stations. We're gonna turn them all into dispensaries.
There's a dream.
There you go. And for whoever steals that idea, it's on podcast, motherfucker. Copyrighted intellectual
right
property. When we go back to this and I challenge you on it, I'm going to win because I said it here first. But I'm okay with you giving me 12% of annual earnings. Said it here first.
There you go. Yeah, for me, it's like this idea of it's more about, like, freedom and lifestyle.
Right, because you love wine.
Because I love wine. So for me, I enjoy it. I enjoy the work. But on top of that, like, I mean, I like to travel on the side. I like to do certain things. And I think what I've always kind of been turned off by in the 9-to-5 work world is that there's just so little flexibility. And especially here in North America, like, if you are working in Europe, you might get a month or two of vacation a year. And, like, your boss and your colleagues all believe you deserve it. Here, I meet people, even incredibly wealthy people, and they're, like, proud to have not taken their 2 weeks vacation because they're working hard. It's like, cool. Like, you're working every single day, every single month for 5 years. You didn't take a vacation. I don't understand why you're so proud of that.
If you could do your job every day, would you do wine tours every day?
I mean, I enjoy it, but if you gave me the chance to, like...
But you kind of diversified yourself, right? Like, you have the opportunity that you can go walk around, do a food tour one day.
Yeah.
And then the next day you drive out to Niagara.
Yeah, and that's part of the beauty of that, is, like, you don't get this routine repetition of what you're doing on your day-to-day work life. But no, like, if I could take every, like, third week and go on vacation, for sure I would.
I think everybody would.
Right? Like, you've got to be crazy to not do that.
But to not take your 2 weeks and work
hard,
that, like, not take your 2 weeks for somebody else?
I don't understand it.
No, that's but you know what? I guess it's a hard idea because you can be rich being the number 6 person at a company, the number 20 person at a company, the number 100%. Like, being rich... You know how few people make $100,000 a year, and
very few,
and people are focused on making $1 million.
Yeah,
like that to me is astonishing.
Yeah, but that's what I want, right? It's like I want this life-work balance, because if you can, again, if you could make $1 million for 5 years and save some of that for retirement, then great. But if you're never gonna, get over that earning point of 80 or 100,000, and you work every day so hard.
But that's a rich person.
It is a rich person.
Depending on the lifestyle you live.
But I think that's just it. Is like you need, and it doesn't mean my lifestyle's better or worse than another one. It's just what I want.
But his mental health becomes a big issue,
that's
right?
my concern, yeah.
Yeah, things are different. It's not like people don't use their big ass house. My parents have a huge house. None of us live, like I have 3 sisters. None of us live in the house anymore. They don't need their...
And how many people, like how often would they have people over that would utilize the full home?
Never. I don't even think anybody... Like, my sisters stayed there at Christmas. But it's... No, they don't need it at all.
Yeah.
And if they... Yeah, they could live in a way smaller house and have so much more wealth and be literally richer. But there's these... I feel like there's a lot of social expectations.
Yeah.
Just surrounding like what you should have and what makes you actually happy. And you know what? Big bills don't make me happy.
Me either.
Not using my house doesn't make me happy. Like I spend a lot of time at home and I'm comfortable here. Would I like it to be bigger? Hell yeah. Does it need to be bigger? No.
Right. I think that's what you got to tell yourself. It's like, you're like, well, is it really worth it? I don't know.
Yeah. At what point? You haven't seen my car, but I drive a 2002 Civic that's like, you got a huge dent. It got smoked, hit and run last year.
Oh, that's.
And I think about it all the time. I'm like, I should buy a new car right now. Buy any car. I went and looked at a bunch of cars, and I didn't buy one because I didn't want to. It almost killed me. I was like, who am I trying to impress by buying this $35,000 car?
Yeah, because on one hand, I mean, there's certain things you need to do to conduct business, and so like for me, I need a pretty nice car so people are comfortable in
Yours
it.
is important because you drive people around.
Yeah, but if I didn't, I'd probably buy maybe something like a Fiat or a Mini that's like easy to park downtown. And like,
he's a tall guy. That's kind of funny that he said that. I always wanted a Mini.
Oh man, I hate parking my beast of an SUV downtown though.
My Civic's awesome.
Right? Yeah.
I park it everywhere. It's so quick. It's so easy.
There's spots where I couldn't get into.
We're in truck country here. Like
Exactly.
if I buy a new car, I was like, I'm gonna buy an SUV or a truck. I don't want a truck at all. God. No, social expectations are crazy. But yeah, eat a little bit more shit, invest a little bit more in your business, be a little bit happier.
Yes.
But if it means not taking a vacation for a bunch of years, I don't know. I don't know if I could do that actually.
I mean, it's something I've looked at, right? I'm like, well, I'm not going to travel as much for these next few years because I need to put priority somewhere else. But it's still one of those things where, 3 or 5 years down the road, it's like, I'm hoping to see some good results, because if I don't, then you're like, well, I sacrificed a part of my life I was already enjoying.
What's interesting, like, I don't think you could piss away 5 years right now. Where would it leave you? Like 35, 33, like fucking in the exact same position that every schmo who worked a $60,000, $80,000 a year job just did. Built a family, never has any failure, success story. I love it when people say, like, go look at regret in old people's eyes. It's like, you know what I would regret? Not failing.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to avoid is regret, right? Like, I mean, failing is fine if you learn from it, but...
what's 10 grand worth, right? What's 100 grand worth?
Yeah, well, and that's what I think of with a lot of stuff. Like, if you invest in something, or even like advertising, like as a young business, you're like, oh, do we put ourselves in this guidebook, or do we put ourselves in this thing?
Instagram advertising earlier
today. Yeah, right. And so you're like, okay, I think of it, you say these, like, this $1,000 that you put into something, I mean, it's part education. It might bring you some success, but maybe you'll do it a different way or not at all in the future. So it's just kind of this matter of learning, like educated learning, right? Like testing the waters and yeah. But yeah.
No, building an online business is it's definitely different. Where do you spend your money? how much Instagram money do you spend? How much Facebook money do you spend? Do you
Yeah.
get a lot of customers from Facebook, Instagram, social networks? Are most of your customers organic? Like, how are you getting your acquisition of customers right now?
It's a mix. Like, there's organic. There's a lot of like reselling through bigger websites like TripAdvisor and their sister sites and that kind of thing.
Okay.
How
How big are your Instagrams now? Do they have like, are they like 1,500 followers?
Yeah, 1,500 to 2,000. So
That's
like
good.
not bad
Good
for like a
organic
local
following.
business. Yeah. But the interesting thing is like I think the food tours lend themselves to a younger like Instagram generation, but the wine tours are a little
They're
like
a-
older demographic, a little more like high end, and they're not necessarily on Instagram. So
How much is a wine tour versus a food tour?
it all depends what it is. But like because we generally are doing boutique tours, meaning like for the most part it's like 2 to 6 people. We do bigger groups, but upon group booking.
Yeah, because you need a bigger vehicle. Because you
Yeah.
just run one limousine type service.
Yeah, and the concept is definitely like boutique, higher end, luxury type idea where, you and 2 other couples get to spend the day with a sommelier or a wine expert going to like small vineyards that are off the beaten path. So it's not like you're getting on a bus with 60 people and they're like, here, taste this,
Yeah, because there are those wine tours in Niagara. If you're listening, you're not familiar with wine tours. There's a plethora, a breadth of wine tours, and there's ones where you can get on a bus and it costs you $25 on Groupon, and they take you to 40 Creek Distillery, and they take you to a bunch of places, and you drink as much liquor as you can, as quick as you can, and it's not about drinking wine. It's not sexy drinking. It's getting drunk. And then there's other tours like the tour you operate where you're picked up in a limousine service, and it's an informed, educated host where that's really going to curate your experience. But there's definitely a difference in customer and a difference in price.
Yeah.
Like the wine tour I went on, I think we paid close to $500 or $600 for the two of us. It was probably I think it was $600 for
Like
the two of
that's
us.
pretty similar to what you'd pay for what we're doing in New World Wine Tours.
Yeah.
That includes all the wine, lunch, pickup from the city, driving down, back, and everything. And you're guaranteed the small group experience.
Guaranteed no more than 6 people.
Yeah.
See, that's awesome. That's a nice thing to know, because the van I got picked up in probably would have had 10 or 12 if it wasn't a Wednesday.
Yeah, and then like if you're a company or you're doing a bachelorette party or something, we can accommodate bigger. But if you're just a couple booking in for the day, 6 is the max, basically in one vehicle.
Yeah,
so
totally.
it's gonna always have that really nice feel to it.
Yeah, and for $1,000, you would probably do a solo day, or would you?
Yeah, we do like lots of private stuff too. So
Because that would be a really nice opportunity for me. I just like the idea of having a driver for the day.
yeah, and we work with some concierges at bigger hotels, and so you get people who, for them, it's not about the money so much as the experience, and maybe their time is really limited or whichever, and so for them, it's like, it's just me or just me and my wife or just me and my husband or us 3 or whatever, and they want the best possible experience for that day. And so
How do I book this again?
go to newworldwinetours.com. We've got our calendar live there, so you can book right online, and or send us an email if you want something special.
Yeah, you're probably seeing bookings coming in right now, because this is kind of the season where everybody starts, I guess after Christmas, everybody's like, oh, now it's time to figure out what I'm going to do.
Yeah, a lot of people start planning for like spring, summer, that kind of stuff.
Wine
so.
season gets booked up crazy. People
It
don't
does.
People don't
It's
realize Canada's emerging. I heard the Okanagan's like Napa Valley. The place I used to stay at for $200 a night, it's now like $700 a night.
Well, and like Prince Edward County too, like Niagara also gets booked out, but Niagara's got a few more hotels and stuff you can stay in. Prince Edward County is a very small area in terms of
Super quaint.
Yeah.
It's a small little like village. It's not even a town.
Yeah, and so it's like super cute, and it's getting really popular, and there's very few hotels, so you'll get people who are like, we want to go this weekend. We're like, yeah, if you can find a hotel,
Yeah,
or
there's
if
a
you,
bed
like,
and breakfast that you might be able to get into for like $700.
Yeah, it's getting kind of crazy, but I mean, Airbnb's there and other things you can do, but yeah, it's interesting because
That might be a cool facet of your business if you could buy. There's enough money to buy a property down there.
maybe one day.
Yeah, I know they're becoming more and more expensive.
Oh, the real estate in Ontario's nuts. So
Yeah, that's brutal, especially in those cool places.
yeah,
especially in those cool places.
I mean, it's still better than Toronto comparatively, but
yeah. On that expensive note, I think I'm gonna let you go. I kept you a little bit longer than I thought. You're gonna.
That's okay. It's been a joy. So
yeah, I love chatting with you. To chat again in a year down the road on the podcast. I'd love to hear how the summer season went.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really cool. Hopefully you come back to Alberta to visit your family
yes,
next holiday season.
I most likely will. So
okay, awesome. Well, I think we should cheers before we leave.
Cheers.
Cheers the wine.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming on Beers with Buds.
My pleasure.
Thank you everybody so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. We'll catch up for another episode. We'll have another Bud on, and we'll have some beers and chat about life. Till then, cheers.
Cheers.